make an announcement before we start. As a standard, I am requesting all cell phones and electronic devices to be turned off or in a mute position as not to disturb the meeting. Any member of the public also has the right to make an audio or video recording of an open session of a public meeting. A member of the public who wishes to record a meeting must first notify the chair and must comply with reasonable requirements regarding audio or video equipment established by the chair not to interfere with the meeting. The chair is required to inform other attendees of such recording at the beginning of the meeting. And we do have a person from the Standard Times who will be recording, as you've probably already seen the flash. With that, we'll open the meeting, June 28th, Board of Selectmen and Sewer Commissioners meeting. And we have roll call.
Mr. Chairman, all 5 selectmen are present, as is the Town Administrator, Mr. Andrews.
All 5 are present with Mr. Mark Andrews. Well, I was just going to make the announcement. Since we have a crowd in here, I know a lot of you are here for Lynn Street and for Contract 3. If you don't mind Lynn Street and Contract 3, we'll step outside. We'll go through the agenda, and as we get to Lynn Street and the CDM contract, then we'll have you come in, because we're exceeding. So if it's Lynn Street, Lynn Road or Contract 3, would you step out and wait your turn and we'll call you in? Because right now we are exceeding the capacity of the room. Lynn Road or Contract 3, will you please step out? Point taken. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There will be no applauding during this meeting. I'm waiting for some of the people to move out. I'm waiting for the Lynn Road Contract 3 to get out. I just announced. Did you hear that? What I announced?
For the what?
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure. Lynn Road and Contract 3, if you please step outside so we can continue with the meeting.
Gary had a question about something like Haley and announcement.
I have it. I have the
I'll leave
announcements.
it on, but I know we're over. I can call the fire department. That's that. We are still waiting for Lynn Road and Contract 3 to exit the room, and we'll start. Okay, clerk, on the announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have it. Is this working? Yes?
Would you close the door, please?
Testing. Mr. Chairman, we have the following announcements. Now that summer is clearly underway in Wareham and Onset, I would like to announce that on Thursday nights, the Onset Bay Movie Company is back in action at the band shell in Onset, which is in the park. And coming up on Thursday night this week, the movie is How to Train Your Dragon. It begins at 8 p.m. It's a great family evening. They usually have popcorn and different things there. So if anyone is visiting or any of the local residents would like to take the opportunity, that's every Thursday night this summer. There are flyers around, and we will continue to promote this here at the Board of Selectmen meetings. So bring your kids down, bring a blanket, and enjoy the movies on Thursday nights. On Wednesday nights, which began last week, I'm not sure how many caught the Aerosmith tribute band Draw the Line, but this week I believe, and again, this starts at the band start at 6:30 every Wednesday night at the Onset band shell. This week I believe is Groovy Afternoon. And yes, it is a little psychedelic, but you will enjoy the music. And again, it's free to the public. Bring your family and enjoy the evening down by the water. The next benefit, and many like this, really bother me deeply personally, but we want to make sure, maybe we could have it quiet again, please. Can we close the door, please?
Yeah, he's a fire department.
Well, the chairman is on his way.
Right. Town administrator.
Mr. Andrews will go out and speak to him. This next announcement is really one that troubles me personally. I really have issues when I hear about sick children. So indulge me for a moment. There is a benefit on Saturday, July the 9th, for Haley Pease. And I'll take a moment with some indulgence. Please join us for a benefit for Haley Jean Pease, fighting for her life at Children's Hospital in Boston. Haley was diagnosed with acute T-cell lymphoblastic leukemia on April 13, 2011. Haley lives in Wareham, Massachusetts. Haley's mom, Shannon, and father, Ricky, have been by her side, and Haley has an older sister, Mary Jane. This family needs our help to help them out financially, as Shannon has had to take a medical leave from work, and her dad has had to take time off to visit with his daughter. All are invited. It's a
Close the door, please. Thank you.
Bill, guard that door, will you? Thank you. Again, tickets are $10 per person and $5 for children. And let me see now. It's July the 9th from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Wareham Elks, and that's 2855 Cranberry Highway. For those who are taking notes, there is a Facebook page titled Benefit for Haley Jean Pease. Feel free to email any of the members of the board, as I'll make sure everybody has a copy. And please do your best. You know, sick children are not, I don't know, it bothers me a lot, so I won't go into that. But please do your best to try to help this family. If you can't make it, there are phone numbers on the Facebook page, or call me, or any of the members of the board will give you these phone numbers. And any donations, obviously, would be accepted. And
Mr.
that ends
Chair.
my, is there any other announcements before I close?
Can I just add to that, Mr. Holmes?
Absolutely.
Two quick things. First of all, a big shout out to Haley. She did celebrate her birthday yesterday. They had a nice party. There is also a Facebook page to keep up with Haley's progress. It's called Prayers for Haley, Hailey. So if you're interested in it's called Prayers for Haley, Hailey. So if you're interested in hearing about her accomplishments, she just did get a visit from Selena Gomez as part of her Make-A-Wish, which was granted. So all the pictures are online. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot about the birthday.
That's okay. I remembered.
It's July the 9th from 1 to 6 p.m. at the Elks.
Citizen participation. So you have Want to step up to the mic and identify yourself? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Philip Miles, Roby Street. This is obviously a open town meeting, and with respect, I would ask that you postpone the balance of this meeting, because there's obviously more people that want to attend this meeting than can legally fit in this room, to another venue that would accommodate those folks so everybody could participate. Would that be reasonable for you to do and entertain?
Under the circumstance of why they're here, I think it would be unreasonable, because I think the two sections that I mentioned, Lynn Road, it's legal ramifications on both of them, and Contract 3. So these people will be here for right now, and we need to solve it now, Mr. Roby. I appreciate it. But we will continue, and they'll be outside right now. They're clearing the hallway because of the fire capacity, but we'll call them as they're needed to come up.
With respect, Mr. Chairman, could we get a ruling on that with Town Council for that not postponing the meeting to accommodate all the people that would like to be here?
If this meeting is televised, this kind of Town Council right here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for the chance to speak to the board. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you may not like what I am going to suggest, but I am going to suggest it anyway. To the extent that people want to actually come in and view the meeting and are not able to because of fire code issues, it does create something of an open meeting law issue, which I think we would all want to very much avoid. There are a couple of different ways of handling it. One, as the gentleman suggests, you could continue the meeting to another time, date, and place certain. That's option number one. The other option, though, is if, for example, the auditorium over in Town Hall was available right now, you could recess this meeting, move it over to the auditorium. You could post a notice up on these doors and probably on the door outside saying Selectmen's meeting moved to auditorium, and that way everybody who wanted to sit and listen could be accommodated, and you could proceed with the business that you have in front of you tonight.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question of Town Council?
Yes.
Attorney Bowen?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. Attorney, do you want to?
No. This is my colleague, Jake.
Yes, I
We're confirmed.
Attorney Bowen,
Yes,
if we were to continue, recess this meeting to a time date certain, would that require a new posting, or could we simply continue it for, say, tomorrow?
My advice would be to give the 48 hours that the open meeting law requires. Under the old version of the open meeting law, some of the DAs were kind of liberal about the business of continuing sessions, but I think the new thinking on it is 48 hours for everything. So you would literally have to take this back up again. If you posted it right now, you could take it up on Thursday at 7:22.
The second half of I anticipated that would be your answer, but my second half of the question is that I'm not sure that we could be able to post that meeting tonight, which would mean most likely tomorrow morning. There is an issue on the agenda which is time sensitive with a deadline of June 30th. If we don't take action on, because we have this Contract 3,
Right.
if we're going to go forward with that contract and we don't act by June 30th, then we lose the financing.
Yeah.
So what would your advice be to us in that case?
Well, you don't want to lose many millions of dollars. My recommendation under those kind of circumstances would be either get that thing posted right away, however you could, or just simply move over to the auditorium right now and carry on with the meeting.
But that brings up a third question. And that would be that we don't have the ability to videotape the meeting in the auditorium.
Mr. Chair, I checked with the film crew, and they would have to call for portable equipment, but it could be done.
How long, does he say how long that would take?
I'll ask them.
Because that'd be my preferred way to do it. I just don't want to...
Can I just make a suggestion? What if they did Lynn Road first on the agenda and the people from Lynn could stay, and then the building would be empty 10 minutes later?
Well, that's exactly what we were trying to do now, but he said everybody wants to be in, so.
And Mr. Chairman,
Well, if it's all right on each and we're right now, why don't we just do act on each and then let
Mr. Chair, I checked, and we could have the film crew set up 20 or 30 minutes, so we could recess till 8 p.m. to the auditorium.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to recess this meeting. Excuse me.
Excuse us.
Folks.
Motion.
I'm doing the best I can here for you guys because I want this meeting to happen tonight, but we also need to make sure that we meet our obligations to the rest of the public who are counting on us being on TV or available to watch on TV at a later date. So please bear with me. I make a motion to recess this meeting to 8 p.m. in the Town Hall auditorium.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you. All right, let's go set up the audio equipment.
Hey, how you doing?
anticipation. Now I gotta wait for this. He got up before me. That's the only thing that happened. Good. Great.
Say that again.
Financial part of the bike path. In other words, the financial collecting money and stuff like that, which you can't do. We've worked for 3 years as the Friends, became very involved with the bike path. I know about as much as anything about the bike path. I've done all I can do with the Friends, and now I want to go back to building the bike path. The committee builds the bike path, and the Friends supports the bike path financially. And so I've resigned from the bike path, or from the Friends rather, so I'm no longer involved in the financial aspect of collecting money, and now I'm going to be strictly trying to get the bike path built, which is going to be a monumental task, I'm afraid. So.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
Mr.
I
Wilson?
believe that we already interviewed Mr. Smith, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't want to subject you to the torture twice.
I'm getting used to it. I did, if I might add, one of the suggestions is that there might be a conflict of interest. I called the Ethics Committee again and told them specifically that the Board of Selectmen were concerned about it, and their opinion was that as long as I'm not getting paid because I'm on the Board of Assessors, so as long as I'm not getting paid for that job and I'm not getting paid on the board, there's no conflict, and as a matter of fact, we're quite pleased that somebody would be willing to sacrifice 2 of their days off for that. So
I appreciate that very much. Go ahead, Mr. Holt. Anybody else? Is there any other questions?
Are we at this time, are there no other questions? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Did you want to take a minute, though, and give the citizens a plug? You are on TV for the bike path.
I'm sorry.
Would you like to give the citizens a plug for the bike path while you're sitting in front of the entire town?
I would just like to suggest for those that have not filled out the survey, we have a survey, a town survey, which has been very helpful in promoting it. And if you are interested, I don't know if you can get it on the town website anymore, but if you go to the WarehamPathway.com, they have a survey, and if you fill that out, and if you're in favor or if you're not in favor, either way, of course, and we're doing that. We're also starting a petition at the Swan Festival. If you would like to participate, see us at the Swan Festival. We're trying to get 1,000 signatures of registered voters within Wareham. So, so if you would show up at the Swan Festival, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thanks, David. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint David Smith to a position on the bike path with the term to expire June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Unanimous, 500.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, next up is the Community and Economic Development Authority. We have an interview this evening with Mr. Bruce Savageau. Mr. Savageau? He was here. There we are. Good evening, Bruce. How are you tonight?
Welcome back, Mr. Andrews. I hope you're feeling better.
Mr. Savageau,
Yes,
I have to speak right into the mic.
Good evening, Board.
There we go.
And
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and welcome back, Mr. Andrews. I hope you're feeling better.
If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Savageau, just giving the board a brief summary as to your interest in serving on...
Yes, sir. Before I do, if I may, with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, one issue with respect to Westfield, the RFP Review Committee's appointments are exhausted as of August 31st, and so the board may want to either reappoint or re-interview. It's your prerogative, but to keep on pace with the revised schedule.
Thank you. So yes, so no.
As far with respect to CETA, you know, I have always felt and I've always stated publicly that the single remedy, the single solution that this community has for its own fiscal and financial independence is economic development. There's really no other solutions remaining. For years, we've cut the budget. We finally cut the municipal maintenance department by yet another $80,000. There is nothing to be cut. If we do, we're going to be closing departments. We need the additional tax revenues that economic development will produce. During my tenure and working with several boards of selectmen, by the way, you have I believe my public resume. I don't have a copy with me, but you'll see that I was the Board of Selectmen's liaison to the CETA committee for about 5 years. I also served on SERPED, Southeast Regional Economic Planning and Development, and within SERPED on the Master Planning Committee, which is the federal highway grant programs. And during my tenure, both as a selectman, liaison to CETA, SERPED representative, and Master Plan representative, I and the several boards that I served with, either directly or indirectly, contributed to the development of well over $200 million in Wareham reinvestment. The middle school project was $22 million, and we received 88% reimbursement from the state. That project was on time and on budget. The BDOD overlay district, that zoning, which I served both originating that BDOT agreement and also working with at the state level. It was defeated twice because of the tax scheme, but ultimately that resulted in a business development agreement with 80 Makepeace. That BDOT development, Rosebrook is just a portion of it. When it is finally built out, conference center, hotel, residential and retail will represent about $50 million of investment in Wareham. The mall, which we as a board all supported and provided sewer to, for example, $50 million additional $1 million. The Westfield project that we were just discussing, when it is finally built out, represents another $30 million of investment into the community. And I would say that if you added all that up, that would exceed $200 million. That's going to represent, when all is said and done, about an additional $1 million in tax-based revenue. The problem is we need an additional $200 million in development, commercial development, not only to increase our tax base, which would be about $2 million in additional revenue, but also to reduce the tax burden on the residents who carry 88% of the tax levy currently. If we could increase our tax growth through economic development, we can decrease the burden on them and increase our budgets substantially so that we could fund our schools without the frustration and confrontation at town meeting to get them funded year after year. We could take care of all of our municipal facilities in terms of capital projects that I know are going to be on the board, and we can avoid 2.5 overrides and operational overrides, which have never had real success in the town of Wareham. And I think we can do that, and I know it's an overworked expression, it's smart growth. I would use the word intelligent growth versus dumb growth. 40B is dumb growth. Projects like the Lynn Street development, that's dumb economics. Other projects that we don't want to see, big box stores, that's dumb growth. Intelligent growth would be a sustained plan and coordinated economic development plan, and CETA is the best place for that to happen. That's exactly why I want to be on that board, because that, frankly, is where the genesis will come from as far as a revitalized economic plan, working very closely with the Board of Selectmen, the ZBA, the other land use boards, and the Department of Community and Economic Development, DHCD.
Any question from the board?
Hi, Mr. Savageau. How are you tonight?
Very well, thank you.
I'm just going to hold this. My question is this. East Wareham is soon to be a ghost town. East Wareham Plaza, the Cranberry Plaza, there's going to be Stop and Shop in there and a dollar store. Do you have any vision as to what we can do with any of these buildings? They're already there, but they're vacant. We have vacant businesses in Onset. I think that you're absolutely correct about increasing our tax base and maybe building developments, but what are we going to do with what we have that's somewhat being abandoned?
Well, that's a really, I believe, a very excellent point, and right on target with this whole development scheme. We're going to be reinvesting 13 to 15 million additional dollars in not only restructuring but re-engineering that road. And as I said last week, that's going to be vitally important to attract new business to a blighted area. We're not just bleeding buildings, but we have structures all along that corridor that are long since been abandoned or dilapidated. The CETA, through federal grant and SERPED grant, and as well as DHCD, should be working closely to identify new and potential businesses that could come in and revitalize those blighted properties so that we don't have to expand into the community and take up precious land that, you know, we all spend a great deal of money to preserve as open space. So I would suggest that that would be the starting ground, is to actually target that corridor as a redevelopment district. And the way that I would consider, I would recommend to CETA and the Board of Selectmen is to develop first a community and a business association in that corridor for that specific purpose, and then seek to develop and attract, once that restructuring and reengineering is completed, to attract new businesses so we don't have to attract big box stores, which I think we can all agree from a tax base is good, from a quality of life is not good.
Thank you.
Any other question, Mr. Snyder?
I'd just like to comment, Mr. Savageau, I appreciate your comments regarding the infill of existing businesses, because I think that is that's a significant portion of the economic development that we need to attract, particularly up in East Wareham. And I think that you've done a very good job explaining what your vision is for the community, and your background in with the town boards, sitting on the number of boards and committees that you have, I think would bring a wealth of information to the CETA board.
Thank you.
I appreciate your contributions.
Thank you.
Mr. Ronald.
Mr. Cruz, I haven't asked any questions of any of the applicants, so I'm not going to, but I'm not sure which one of us had been asking. There's the CETA board, and then there's the advisory CETA board. Do you have an issue with, I mean, are you up for both? One, only one, both?
Excuse me, I think the application only says CETA, so at the advisory board, we'll just hold off on that one. Thank you.
Correct. Yes, to answer the chairman's point, that's the committee that I was interested on, was the CETA board, because they deal directly with DHCD and the advisory board does not.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Holmes.
So, because this came up, it's come up before. We have the CETA Advisory Board. Just so the board knows, we have.
I don't think they can hear you.
We have the CETA Advisory Board, which has one opening, and we also have a reappointment. And then we have the Economic Development Advisory Board, which has 3 vacancies, although I believe there are 3 vacancies on that. So all told, we're looking for 4 total people. Now, Mr. Chairman, your opinion was that you were not going to allow.
Yeah, to make it clear, this is what we got on the agenda is for CETA, and that's the only one we're going to entertain tonight on the CETA, and we're not going to entertain any advisory board. If we are going to entertain the advisory board, it needs to go out like any other board, have people apply for it, because right now, as Mr. Savageau stated himself, his application only says CETA, and that's the only one we're going to entertain. And I think CETA is up right now Mr. Holmes, so I think we need to continue with that to know how many is available, how many spots are open, and how many people have applied. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Savageau.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. On the position of permanent member or full member to this Community Economic Development Authority, we've had 3 individuals apply over the last several months. We had Jennifer Peterson, Mr. Robert Brady, and Mr. Savageau. So first, I would make a motion to reappoint Ms. Jeffries, Joe Jeffries, to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor? Aye. All in favor?
Oh, yes.
Let's call the roll call. Alan?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Because I haven't heard anything from the rest of the
Seconded
board.
that motion.
I did.
Karen.
Go through this again. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 5-0-0. Now, you said you have 3 available for that one opening
No.
spot?
And that's going to be for 2014. I'd like to thank Mrs. Jeffries. I don't believe she's here this evening, but I'd like to thank her. She's been an outstanding member of that board, and she's going to continue now for another 3 years. I'd like to just give a shout out to Joe Jeffries. She's been a valued member of that group, and she wanted to continue serving, and she does an outstanding job, and now she'll be appointed till 2014. So we have 1 position available for the full CETA board. 3 applicants, 1 vacancy. I'll make a motion that...
Do we have a recommendation, Mr. Holmes?
The recommendation was... It's in the old packet. They had... The actually, you know, technically speaking, we probably shouldn't be appointing this membership because there is a flaw here. Now, the gentleman who just interviewed had submitted an application to the office. Last week it was discovered that we didn't see the application. So he has not actually had the opportunity to go before the local board. The other 2 have.
Mr. Holmes, going before the board is only a recommendation. They do not have to go to the board. It's only recommended.
You're the chairman. I'm just, Mr. Cruz, with all due respect.
What I'm trying to do is
I am trying
keep the process moving.
I'm just
and
trying
be
to...
equitable to everybody. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, it's my obligation to you. You asked me to do a job. I'm trying to inform the board of what has taken place so that they understand that this gentleman has not gone before the CETA board, and I was asked what the recommendation of the CETA board was.
Now, do you have the recommendation? There isn't any.
He hasn't been interviewed by the CETA board.
Well, then that's it. He was told to go in. You had already extended the deadline for doing that last week to this week so he can get his application in. And I think everybody on the CETA board already knows Mr. Savageau.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may. Considering that we did only receive the application last week, I'm not certain that the CETA board has had the opportunity to interview Mr. Savageau, and I would move that we put off the appointment until the CETA board has had the opportunity to interview Mr. Savageau as they have the other 2 applicants.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 4-1-0.
Is that Mike and Alan? I'm sorry. Mike made the motion?
Mike and Kara.
And I'll have Janet in the morning, Mr. Chairman, I'll have Janet send the chairman of the CETA board. I think she already has the notification, but the invitation has not been sent to the candidate to go and meet the board. So at this point, I would make an announcement then at this point that there are 3 vacancies that exist on the Economic Development Advisory Committee to the CETA board. Anyone that's interested, please fill out your application in the office. We'd like to try to get these are important positions as outlined by Mr. Savageau and many others. This is an important development committee to the town of Wareham, and we are seeking members, and we'd like to have some interviews next month to try to get these vacancies filled. It's a very important position. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Chairman, we have the Board of Health. We did receive, I believe, it's been done. On the Board of Health, we were waiting for a recommendation by the board from the chairman. And I got that. Oh, I just looked over there. We were waiting for a recommendation back to the board. I understand that it's not mandatory. However, in keeping in line with other positions, we do try to give the chairman and the respective boards an opportunity. And I believe everybody got this in their packet, so you know what the Board of Health recommended. There are 2 associate positions available on the Board of Health. And all these have been...
Mr. Chair, are you looking for a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Right now, how many people do we have?
Mr. Chair, there was an interview today that I don't think that this board had an opportunity to interview that applicant, but I was at the Board of Health meeting today, and Mr. Glenn Montero had an application in since 2009 and was interviewed by the Board of Health today, but I don't believe was interviewed by this board.
Mr. Chair,
So what is your pleasure?
Mrs. Begley is factually correct. It was the board prior to the recent election that interviewed Mr. Montero.
So it's the board's pleasure.
Well, my question would be, was that interview conducted before or after the recommendation was made to us?
Before.
So that individual was taken into account prior to us getting the recommendation?
I'm going to say again, what is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I'd prefer to make appointments to this board at this time.
Well, we want to go, just a little while ago, we put off one because they didn't get interviewed. Now this one, you're going to go with it.
Well, no, I asked Mrs. Begley. We interviewed Mr. Montero when he put his application in, prior to him being interviewed by the board. Mrs. Begley and Mr. Schneider were not sitting on the board at that time. However, he did interview. I mean, if we want to be technical, then we would have to re-interview a number of different candidates that have been interviewed and sitting in the file. But Mr. Montero was interviewed by our board previous, and if I heard Mrs. Begley correctly, and I may not have because the acoustics are bad in here, Mr. Montero was interviewed by the Board of Health prior to their recommendation letter to us.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mrs. Winslow, that may be true, but you had the opportunity to interview him. I had the opportunity to be there while he was being interviewed today, and Mr. Schneider was not afforded that opportunity. Nor was, well, Mr. Cruz was there with the prior board as well.
Well, if I don't hear any entertainment on this, we're going to put this off and we'll revisit it.
Just for my clarification, Mr. Chairman, and I do agree that it should be put off, particularly if this gentleman was only interviewed by the Board of Health today. We are talking about the former health inspector of the town, are we
Yes.
not? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, then I would request that all the applicants who've been on file, including Mr. DeFelice, Mr. Brady, and others, also come in for interviews before our board. The difference between this situation and the situation with Mr. Savageau is that Mr. Savageau had not been afforded an opportunity to interview with CETA, and therefore their recommendation to us was not inclusive of them having an opportunity to rate him as a candidate. In this case, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health have interviewed all applicants. The Board of Health has made a recommendation to us. In fact, they've given us their 1, 2, 3, and 4 choices. There's absolutely no reason to delay this any further.
I have a motion from the board. Well, I take that back. I already made a statement. We're going to put this off until further notice. So we're going to put this off. Sorry about that. Go to the next one. Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Chairman, is the Library Board of Trustees. Actually, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take that back. I'd like to clear this up before I forget. I'd also like to make a motion at this time to reappoint Kenneth R. Ferreira to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term to expire no later than 2016. I forgot to include the chairman in reappointment.
Second.
Motion made and second for Ken on the zoning board. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Unanimous, 5-0-0.
And now we're up to the Library Board of Trustees.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Clerk, how many applicants do we have on file for the Library Board of Trustees?
Hang on one second. We have we have 1, 2, 3 positions available. 2 of those positions are reappointments. And the chairman, former chairman, I guess, has retired from that board. We have Ms. Kathleen Laflamme. We have Ms. Kathleen Laflamme. I'm very sorry, I can hear myself and I'm deaf, so, and Lee Carmody is up for reappointment. Kate Furler is up for reappointment. We did Mrs. Laflamme's interview last week. That's all I have. Now, that we put this off for a week because there was, I believe we had asked for recommendations, and Mrs. Winslow, you're the one who asked us to put this off for a week, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Clerk. In the past, the board has not necessarily made recommendations. They are looking to create a process by which to make recommendations, which is something that we're going to work on. However, the new chairman of the board did make a recommendation to us today. It seems like he may want to say something. Should we let him? I vote no.
Now, what does this pertain to? You're the chairman of the library?
Yes, Mike Flaherty, Chairman of the Library Board of Trustees.
To talk right into the mic.
Okay.
Closer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you guys in receipt of that message today about the recommendation for Kathleen LaFlame?
Yes.
Yes, the Board of Trustees did vote to recommend her.
And she's the only applicant, right, beside the two reappointments?
The only one I'm aware of, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk? Thank you very much. Make a motion? Make a motion on these. You only have one opening.
Oh, I'd make a motion then to appoint Kathleen LaFlamme to a position on the Library Board of Trustees for a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made, second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
You're trying to steal my thunder.
Unanimous, 500.
Mike?
Mike second.
Give it to Mike. He wants it real bad.
Yeah, Mike.
And then you have the two reappointments, and there's a letter from the outgoing chair, so if somebody wants to make that motion, that's fine with me.
Mr. Chairman, I move to reappoint Blake Carmody to a term to expire June 30th, 2013.
14.
3 years. 3 and 14.
I move to reappoint Blake Carmody to a term to the Wareham Board of Library Trustees for a term to expire June 30th, 2014.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 410.
Mr. Chairman, I move to reappoint Kathleen Furler, to a term to the Library Board of Trustees for a term to expire June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 410.
I think that... Oh, one more. Wait a minute. Mr. Chairman, we have one more, the Conservation Commission, and we had put this off from last week. I believe, Mrs. Begley, we were waiting for an answer from the gentleman, correct?
Mr. Cruz, through you to Mr. Holmes, I did have an email response from the gentleman in question, and he said that at this time that his construction company does not have any business dealings in the town of Wareham.
And I think past practice was that they would have to sign something, right? Right, to say that they will not do business in the town of Wareham in the future either while he serves on that board. Was he was fine with that?
That was the only response.
Because we went through that with the engineer guy on, I'm trying to remember what the committee was.
Mr. Holmes, how many positions do we have?
I think there was a couple open. He was the only one, I believe. Yeah, it's not in. I have to go back to the other packet for a second, but I think we had a couple of positions open. He was the only one that had applied, I believe.
Mr. Holmes, can we have a breakdown on that conservation?
Hang on 1 second, Mr. Cruz. I'm getting to it. It's not in the new packet. Do you have yours with you, Mrs. Begg? For some reason I don't have that because we were waiting for that. On the Conservation Committee, for reappointments, we have 2 that need to be reappointed. 3 associate positions exist. The board did interview Mr. Williamson on June the 7th. So, we have... Okay, so on the Conservation Committee, I make a motion that we reappoint Mr. Kenneth J. Baptista to term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I have a motion
Unanimous, 500.
Motion to reappoint Douglas Westgate to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made and second.
Time out. I withdraw that motion.
I withdraw my second.
Thank you. The associate member is 1 year. So, Mr. Westgate, to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2012. Trying to add years.
Second.
Motion made and second. Douglas Westgate.
And I would make a motion to appoint Peter Williams.
Hold it. Let's get one done at a time.
We have to take a vote.
All in favor of Douglas Westgate?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
And I would make a motion.
500.
No, sorry, I did it again. Mr. Chairman, and the board members, I make a motion to appoint Peter Williamson to a term to expire no later than, as an associate member, to a term to expire no later than, oh, wait a second, he's an associate. No voting power. So it's not subject to a disclosure form, or would it?
Oh, sir, you're too kind. You shouldn't have.
Does it need to just... Well, no, we can't do that. I think he needs to fill it out. All right, I'll make a motion to appoint Peter Williamson as an associate member of the Conservation Commission with a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2012, subject to Mr. Williamson signing a disclosure form.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 500.
Mr. Chairman, next, we have the minutes from September 14th, 2010 for approval.
I just need to make sure I'm not absent on anyone.
Oh, first let me ask before we do that, is there anybody that I missed on the appointment list? I want to make sure. Okay. Yeah, it's always good to ask. First, we have the minutes from September 14th, 2010. I make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
300.
302.
302.
302.
Mr. Chairman, next I have the minutes. I would make a motion to approve the minutes of September 21st, 2010.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 302.
Mr. Chairman, next I have a motion to approve the minutes of a regular meeting from October 19th. Mrs. Winslow left at 10 o'clock that evening. So maybe she can only give like a half a vote, 3/4 of a vote.
You want me to half a second?
What do I need to say?
Yeah, was that a motion? That's a motion made. You second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 302.
Mr. Chairman, next we have minutes. I make a motion Make a motion to approve the minutes of December 7th. You need to second this.
Yep, second. The reason why there's only two of us second, there's only two of us present.
Mrs. Winslow was absent. You were actually the
The other-
chairman that
the other
evening.
chairman
and I was
on
the
here.
clerk.
203.
Next, we have the minutes of... It's an open meeting. Yes, minutes of an open meeting on June 14, 2011.
Motion made.
Everybody was here, except for me.
Second by Mike.
Oh, actually, this was the meeting we had on the census.
All in favor?
Precincts.
All in favor? Aye.
Who seconded the motion?
Mike.
Okay, thank you.
500.
Mr. Cruz, that takes care of all the minutes, and now you're off to Mr. Andrews' report.
Okay, town administrator report. We're going to try to make this brief.
Mr. Chairman, I will make it very brief. I'd like to introduce Elsa Miller, who is our new Director of Assessment. Elsa, just come up just briefly, just say hello, and I want to introduce you to not only the board, but the listening audience, the audience that's here. Welcome, and welcome to our leadership team.
Thank you. This is my indoctrination.
Get a little closer.
But I'm very pleased to be under Mr. Andrews' reign of fire here and to meet all of you on the board. I've met several of you during the This is going on.
It's okay, yeah.
Not me, which was very long. I think you've all seen my resume. I came into Mass Appraisal when Proposition 2.5 first hit the city of Boston. And then I started working as a real estate appraiser. I'm a certified appraiser in the state, and I have been assessing in the town of Hull for the last 2 years, and I've been on the board in Cohasset for the last 13 years. So I'm looking forward. I wanted a waterfront, water view community, and I found one.
Great.
And I'm very pleased. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsa.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Hold the applause, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to jump down, if I could, to item E and ask Larry Gaines. Larry, just come forward just briefly for a minute. On the 16th of June, Larry and I attended along with Yvonne Stone and Dolores Cabral. We received a $2,000 grant for the town. Doesn't sound like a lot, but I just wanted to make mention that it is very important. We will be expanding our nutrition programs for our seniors and our programs through the Council on Aging. And Larry, maybe you can just give us an update. It was a pleasure to be with you at that award ceremony, and congratulations.
Thank you, Selectman, Mark, and audience. I think it's the first move Waraham's elderly have made to show the town that there are many, many seniors really, truly in need. And this particular goal was to get the grant from United Way, which you were so graciously to award us, and to supply the Council on Aging with a new way to do their pantry to give all of the seniors in town over 60 a better nutritional value of balanced food from our Council on Aging. And that's basically what it's all about. We're 3/4 of the way to the goal, and hopefully we'll have it in place no later than the end of August.
Great, thank you, Larry. And through you, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and the entire group, the Friends of Wareham Elderly. We have identified room 108 in this building where we will have that refrigeration unit, and once again, we'll be able to get more nutrition both through our programs and through outreach to the elderly here in town. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can go back to, I'll take B, C, and D at one time. I was not able to be here last week. I wanted to make mention that Chairman Cruz and I have been attending the regional planning for the full-depth reconstruction of Cranberry Highway, Route 6 and 28. Our money is on the line. If we don't make our move to get this project off the ground, it will go to another community. I'm trying very hard not to let that happen, as well as this board, and I'll be working very closely with the members of this board, as well as the Signed Ordinance Committee, which includes the town planner, John Charbonneau, Alan Slavin from the Planning Board, Richard Secker from the Planning Board, Peter Sanborn from CEDA, and Miles Burke in our Inspectional Services area, to assist businesses with this program, particularly as it relates to their signage. I know it sounds quick, but it's a very important project. When it's all done, I believe it's going to be close to $14 to $15 million. And it's our money that's been held in Boston. We need to get it here for the town to help that corridor become safer. As one applicant for CEDA said earlier, more appropriate for business development. And Mr. Chairman, I will dispense with the rest of my report. I would just like to also add that the chairman and I and this board is working very closely with the Digital Credit Union, which has recently acquired Bay Point. We are working to make sure that all of the deposits made on events and activities going forward are kept. I provided the board with an updated, as of this afternoon, Mr. Mark Harriman from Digital Credit has been working very closely with us, and he has indicated to us that all of the deposits made for events going forward under his watch will be maintained, and whether it's a wedding or birthday party, whatever it might be, we'll make sure that that goes forward without any interruption. And Mr. Chairman, if I could dispense with the rest of my report, unless...
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Andrews, I'd just like to have an update on the DECA safety issues.
Say that again.
I'd just like to have Mr. Andrews comment on the DECA safety issues item on his report.
Mr. Chairman, we've been working on this for some time, and I believe the crosswalks are set, have been contracted to be put in place, and I will provide you with the actual date when that happens. Thank you. It does, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go right into town business on the extension of CDM contract. We're going to move that to the end after contract 3. Right now we'll do the cell phone tower on 58. We're looking for a motion to accept the tower. Clerk. Do I hear a motion? This is a tower located on Roby's property in West Wareham, and it services the police department. So we need a consensus of the board.
Make a motion we accept the... I make a motion that we accept, or make a motion that we approve the cell phone tower on the Roby property and the licensing agreement that governs that on the Roby property in West Wareham.
Motion made.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 5-0. 5-0. 4. 2-0. 4-0. All right. Karen? Okay, that was 4-1-0. 4-0-0. Oh, sorry, 4-0-1.
4-0-0.
Yeah, that's... Okay, I guess this is what most of us been waiting for, or half of us, I guess. That's an update by the council on Lynn Road. Council, step forward, please. Mr. Jay Talman?
Yep.
Okay.
Good evening. We've been looking into...
Talk right into it.
Right into... We've been looking at this issue now for about a week and a half.
Sorry. Can you hear back there?
Speak up. We've been looking at this issue in earnest for about a week and a half, and we've focused on two principal issues, one of which really involves the town and the other which is more of a private matter, but we've looked at both of those issues. The two issues are, one, with respect to zoning and whether or not this facility could be located in the town under zoning, and the second is the impact of certain private covenants that inure to the benefit of the homeowners association. And it's that latter issue which, although we've reviewed it and we've spoken with some of the parties in interest, we're not a beneficiary of the covenants, we're not named in the covenants, we're not a party to the covenants, so we are really just monitoring that. Those covenants themselves may impose certain restrictions or at least some process on the use of that site, but those are private matters between the homeowners association and the owners or the lessees of the facility. Those covenants do arise under a zoning permit, but they're a requirement of the permit, and there is also a requirement under zoning that no building permits issue until there's a box checked that that there's been an okay through the homeowners association. But that really leads us to the second point. Kara, did you have a...
I do, if Mr. Chair will indulge me.
Well, Selectman Winslow, could you please wait until he finishes the statement and then we'll ask questions at the end? Thank you.
Certainly. So, and I'll give the brief summary of how the covenants then are impacted in terms of the town's role under zoning. First of all, let me make it clear that the Board of Selectmen has no permitting role under this project. You guys don't issue a permit. You have certain enforcement rights that any member of the public has in terms of requesting enforcement, but you have no official role. Your role is to, as we are here tonight, to review the issues, comment upon them, try and move policy in the direction that you want to, assess where the town's risks and liabilities are, but you're not issuing a permit. You don't issue occupancy. You don't make decisions on the zoning. You don't make decisions on the covenants. You are an important decision-making body in terms of developing policy and maybe making requests of your staff and your leadership team, but you're not. There's nothing that you're issuing that either stops or permits the project per se. On the zoning issue, and there's been a fair amount of written about this, it's not particularly intuitive. What we have and what the words that you hear over and over again is something called the Dover Amendment. The Dover Amendment is a broad-based exemption to essentially all of zoning for certain types of uses. It applies to solar facilities, daycare facilities, religious facilities, agricultural facilities, and in this case, educational facilities. And the statute has been interpreted, and it's written into the Zoning Act to provide incredible leniency, much to the chagrin very often of municipal officials and your council, because there's very little fight that we have in our toolbox to shape those uses. Now, we've extracted, and I've had many Dover Amendment cases since I started doing land use law about 15, 20 years ago. We have many tools to shape uses, but very rare is an opportunity where we can turn the Dover Amendment on its head and preclude a use. That being said, we examine every potential use or every claim for Dover Amendment use under the criteria that we know to apply. For example, in the educational sense, the classic sense, and the way this came up originally is colleges, schools, the classic educational institutions that I think were at the heart of it when they were creating the Dover Amendment many years ago. But it has evolved. It has evolved to consider all other types of education as well. There are, even though this issue is certainly, well, it's not entirely novel to Wareham, but there has been another group home educational facility in Wareham that we're aware of, and maybe more than one, but this particular issue is new to most of the residents of Wareham and new to your board and many of the other boards and officials in town. There are a great line of cases that discuss educational components associated with mental health facilities or group homes of all types, shapes, and sizes. And what the cases say universally is that it's not education in the classic sense. It's not just opening books and learning math and learning English and learning science. It is the teaching of life skills, of healthy eating skills, of other types of educational pursuits that helps people function as contributing citizens to their community. And the cases have come down, with the exception of one case that we know of, to allow a very small educational component to be sufficient, again, often to my chagrin, because it doesn't allow us much flexibility, a very small component to allow the use of this broad-based exemption. So when we get a case like this, and we have to examine it, there's a lot of questions that I ask. The user of this facility, the potential user of this facility, has been very good in terms of providing me with information about their particular use, and we've also conducted some of our own investigation based upon their other facilities. So I ask things like, what are the various programs you're offering? How do they correlate to education? What materials do you have? Give us a sample schedule of something. What is on-site? What is off-site? So over the past week and a half, and again, it's not as exhaustive, but it's as much as I can provide at this point. I've done a significant amount of research into what this particular facility is going to provide. And what they are going to provide is a number of various activities that, under the cases as I read them, likely constitute sufficient on-site education to have an arguable, and it's nothing set in stone, but based upon the cases, it fits within a basic pattern of support for use of the Dover Amendment. It's not ironclad, but it does fit into the pattern of some of these cases, which doesn't mean that it couldn't be subject to challenge by anyone withstanding to challenge it. But they have such activities on a daily basis, such as integrative arts, healthy eating education, cooking skills education, basic career-based education, physical education. These are the types of activities that show up in some of the other cases. Does this one provide a unique slate of activities that don't mirror exactly the other cases? Sure it does. But it does fit into those patterns. If, in fact, it is determined that they meet all of those requirements under these cases, then any requirement under zoning, with the exception of certain safety considerations as emergency access for fire trucks and not overcrowding and parking and traffic, subject to some reasonable regulation of those things, they are entitled to essentially waive your entire zoning code in its entirety and get a building permit and then get an occupancy permit. And I know we're at that point in this case where they've received a building permit. I know that the occupancy permit is presently on hold. So these are the decisions that your inspectional services have to make. If and when the inspectional services team decides to issue any of these permits, those are appealable events by, again, either a local official that has standing or any member of the citizenry that has standing to make a complaint. If they make a complaint or appeal a building inspector's decision, then it goes up to the Zoning Board of Appeals where a hearing would be held to determine if they are indeed entitled to the Doberman. We go through the process again. We examine the uses on site and we help the zoning board craft a decision. We give them the benefit of our experience, et cetera, and then we move on from there. If a party is dissatisfied at that point, then they can then take this issue to the courts. And again, the process starts all over again, what we call de novo. So the facts are heard again, and the courts then decide if they are in fact entitled to the Dover Amendment. There is another element to these, though, too, and I'm getting close to the end of my brief statement, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. And that is that recently, there has been a lot of suits, well, not a lot of suits, but some notable suits, both against communities and against other people who would raise complaints, whether they be local officials or members of the public, in the nature of civil rights. And that is that when people, some users or some other advocates of some of these facilities have brought suit against local officials, and I've been involved in some of these suits as counsel for both towns and local officials, they'll bring suits claiming you're violating the civil rights. Now, just today, I was contacted by the Attorney General's office to let me know, and I don't know if this is, I don't believe it's a scare tactic, I think it's just a heads up, that the Attorney General's Department on Civil Rights has essentially been notified of this matter. My comment to them is, we have not taken any action as a town adverse or for the project in any way, shape, or form, and I'm not aware of anyone else who has taken such an action or is trying to prevent or have an impact on this. Thank you for the heads up. We'll be sure to keep you posted. Nevertheless, it gives me as counsel who has to take it to conservative line for you all to keep you guys out of liability. It gives me some cause for concern that there are a lot of eyes watching this. So I want to be very, very careful as we move forward to make the right decisions, to provide you the counsel that you want in any way, shape, or form, regardless of the direction that you or the building inspector or the zoning board wish to take in this. So I know that this has come at you guys at light speed. I know it's controversial. The controversy I completely appreciate. I've been through this in 5 or 6 communities now. It is never easy, and it's there's always a lot of concern. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the board? Kara, I think you have one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things. If we can go back to your earlier statement about the actual issuance of the building permit. This, as you mentioned, this particular subdivision has covenants. And these covenants are very, very specific. So if I lived on Lynn Road and I wanted to put up a purple shed, I have to go to the homeowners association and say, I want to put up a purple shed. And the homeowners association says no. If I come to the building department and try and pull a permit, aren't they going to look for the homeowners association approval?
This is why the intersection of the covenants and zoning are important for everyone to understand here. First of all, I've seen one of several covenants that I believe apply here. I haven't seen all of them, and I do think the one covenant that I have seen does have a private right for the homeowners association to insist on their approval. There is a recent case that is an important recent case that suggests that private restrictions, such as covenants, are not waivable by the Dover Amendment. So the people who have private rights under a covenant don't have to worry about the Dover Amendment per se in terms of somehow precluding or prohibiting their enforcement of those covenants. So I think that's important to note. You also have, as a creature of your zoning bylaws, as well as the permit that was issued for the subdivision, a requirement that the building department check a box before, essentially state that they won't, they can't issue a building permit until there's been a sign-off by the homeowners association. However, the effect of the Dover Amendment, which provides exemptions, provides an exemption from that requirement as well. That is a zoning requirement. Those are the types of requirements that you can waive by action of the Dover Amendment. So while they could collect that sign-off, the building inspector's decision is based upon compliance with zoning. The fabric of zoning is twofold in this case. The permits issued for the subdivision, as well as your zoning bylaws. The permits and the zoning bylaws are essentially waivable under the Dover Amendment. The actual covenant that is granted and benefits all the private parties is not waivable, but the building inspector's analysis under zoning is waivable, and that's what has happened in this case.
Okay. So to understand you, if I lived on Lynn Road and I wanted to open a daycare, because that's covered under the Dover Amendment, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Child
Yes.
care? I could come to the building department, get a permit to add an addition, and paint the entire house purple, and there's nothing they can do. They have to issue the permit, and it's solely up to the homeowners association to deal with.
With an important caveat to that. First of all, you have, two important. You can't just be any daycare. You have to be a licensed facility, cognizable by the Commonwealth. Well, there's a lot of unlicensed daycare facilities.
But let's assume that I'm a licensed daycare, and my theme color is purple.
Right. The color itself, I don't think we have any control over in terms of what happens at the building department. Under the Dover Amendment, we're allowed to provide reasonable controls on things in terms of the level of activity. For example, one of the areas of analysis that I undertook when I got this case on my desk was to talk with building services and ask them about, is there enough parking? How many beds? Because they can't necessarily prohibit the use, but if there's too much use and there's not enough parking and the fire truck can't get in, then we can shape the project. So one of the initial areas of inquiry is, how much parking do they need in your assessment? Do they have that parking? Can the fire truck get in? Those types of questions. Those were answered in the affirmative. So that's really the very small sliver of control that we have. So in your example, if this was going to be in a 3-bedroom house, 42 kids, we could have something to say about it. If it was 2 or 3 kids, probably not.
Okay. Moving on, because I know everybody's been here for quite some time tonight. In terms of the information that you were supplied by Fellowship Health, and you were kind enough to share some of that with me, that information is in direct conflict to the public statements that they made at meetings on June 20th. So the existing programs that they have now are not the program that they're proposing to put on Lynn Road. At those public meetings, and I do believe that a private citizen taped the meeting, although I am not quite sure who it would have been, they stated that the clients would leave the home at around 9:30 in the morning and that they would be off-site for almost the entire day, that their services are all provided off-site. The schedule that they gave you has art and yoga and things that are allegedly being given in the house. So what happens, and I'm asking these questions more as a hypothetical, because I think that the people who are sitting here tonight should have a full understanding of of this in the process, because as I'm hearing you say that there's not that much that we as a town can really do, it's going to lie with the homeowners association, but at the same time there are other issues, and I want to make sure that they understand. So you've been supplied a schedule, and Fellowship Health has publicly given out another schedule. What do we do?
It's a good question, and you and I discussed it briefly previously, and we can only operate at the initial stages, the building permit stages, based upon what we know. First of all, I have no knowledge of what they may have said at that prior meeting. I haven't been given a tape of it. I've only heard little bits and pieces of it, mostly tonight from you. I have information directly from the fellowship offices. I have no way of independently verifying it because the place hasn't opened. That suggests to me that they have a number of activities, both on-site and off-site. And among the on-site activities are those types of activities that are educational in nature. Now let's flash forward a little bit, 2 months from now, and we become aware of a fact pattern that suggests that none of those activities are on site, or too small a percentage of them are on site such that probably can't qualify for the Dover Amendment. We have enforcement mechanisms under zoning to then issue orders for as tough as cease and desist. Once we know more about the facility, we can do that. Or if we were betrothed of information now, I mean, because as I understand it, there's no issuance of an occupancy permit just this moment. If we knew now that in fact these activities were all off-site, it might help inform my opinion as to whether or not they would fit under the Dover Amendment. And there are close calls and not close calls. As if they are doing all of these activities on site that they're saying they're doing on site, there's a very strong case to be made they're entitled. If it turns out 3 months from now that they're doing them all in another facility in another town, then I think nothing precludes us under law to saying, hey, knock it off. So we do have that part. We do not lose the right to enforce by virtue of giving them an occupancy permit. We have the right to continuously keep an eye on what they're doing now.
Thank you. And just as a final comment, I did make a note that you have worked in other communities to help craft policy around these types of issues, and I'm hoping that my colleagues and the chair of the board will consider that, because I think that may be the best way for us to move ahead in the future for the community is through policy.
And just to share a little bit what I recommend going forward with the inspectional services group especially is get us involved early. You have a mechanism now with town council services such that we can be more proactive and preemptive. If there's a close call on these matters at the inspectional services office, we can help them make that call. If it's too close to call, we suggest deny it, let's have a full hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Here, some of the toothpaste was already out of the tube and the building permit issued, and then secondarily, I was given enough information to put the pieces back together to get us where we are here today. But we like to be involved and help, if we can, and help the building inspectors ask the kinds of questions that I've asked of Fellowship. And let me reiterate that I'm not sure what they said here a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure exactly what services they're going to do, but they have been an open book to me in terms of giving me the information I've requested. It would have next time, and hopefully there's not necessarily a next time, we do this inquiry early in the process, get the neighborhood informed, get your board informed, get everyone informed, so that there's less mystery surrounding it.
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sled.
Part of the problem with this whole process is the fact that it has, at least from the residents' perspective and from the town's perspective, is that it has not been an open and transparent process from either the state or the contractor or the service provider.
Can't hear you.
I want to be very careful about what I say here because I'm very conscious of the potential for discrimination claims.
Can't
But
hear you.
But I do have a question. If you can elaborate at all on how this particular property would fall under the Fair Housing Act of 1964. In particular, even under that act, active drug users and sex offenders are prohibited from occupying certain housing simply for the fact that they could potentially, or they do oftentimes represent an immediate health and safety risk for residents of the community. And that is straight from the Fair Housing Act. Can you tell me how that applies in this particular situation?
Well, the Fair Housing Act certainly applies. Much of that is handled at the licensure stage with DMH. We're always happy to make comment and investigation on that. We don't have as much role. There are sex offender registration requirements, of course, but DMH is going to handle most of the licensure and review under the Fair Housing Act. That's not to say that there isn't a potential complaint and certain appellate actions under the Fair Housing Act, but most of that stuff gets handled through the licensure aspect when they screen for the types of residents that they have in, and then they have a lengthy application and review process for each particular client that they bring in as well to make sure that they're within the four corners of the particular license that they're getting from DMH. There isn't always, we don't get involved as a community at that licensure stage, although we're certainly entitled to review any public records that exist on anything like that.
I was at one of the meetings that took place with the vendor and the state, and the question was posed whether or not the facility would house, whether or not query reports would be performed on the potential residents. They didn't have the answer to that question. They didn't know the time frame in which sex offenders were required to report to the police department and register with the town. That concerns me. And I think there were several other board members present at that meeting. But I certainly do understand that we have to be careful of civil rights complaints. I think, from my perspective, the fact that, there's been a lot of information hopefully forthcoming from this that is helping the homeowners association to address the problem as well. Now, I know that the building permit was issued on April 14th, and it was issued based upon, it basically was issued to the former owner of the property.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The building permit was issued on April 14th.
Right.
It was issued to the former owner of the property, not Mr. White. Mr. White then applied for his residential loan, as I understand it, public records, Plymouth County Registry. On that application was a residential loan application, which basically stated that the the loan was subject to the covenants of the homeowners association. And I'm wondering if that, in your opinion, gives them greater leeway in having more oversight over this development.
From my perspective, and I've spoken with the inspectional services, we've had them, there was a certain amount of misinformation in terms of exactly what the application was for and under what department. They've revisited the various use codes under the state building code, and the permit, it would not have altered their decision as to whether or not to issue the permit. Combined with the various exemptions that exist under the permit, as well as the various requirements under it, in combination with the Dover Amendment, which takes care of the zoning complications, they feel, and I got a memo from the building department late last week, that they feel that the permit was validly issued at that time. They're withholding, on my advice, or were withholding and are still withholding, I take it, the occupancy permit until we sort through the Dover Amendment questions. At this point, I've done, I think, enough analysis that they can make a call on that. That independent review and decision to either issue or not issue that occupancy permit is subject to further appeal and review. And I'd submit that independent of the issuance of that, and the issuance of that is itself appealable by the homeowners association. The homeowners association likely has other remedies too under the original building permit or otherwise. There are complications to that, and I wouldn't begin to give them legal advice on that. As I understand it, they may have legal counsel, very good legal counsel in fact, but there are various rights and remedies even to challenge what has gone on already and what may happen, what may be issued in the future.
I think that, we do learn as we move forward, and there always seems to be the need to create new policies, et cetera. And I know that several other communities have adopted, certain ordinances or bylaws related to sex offenders in particular. For example, I don't believe the town of Wareham has an ordinance that says that a sex offender must stay away from stay within 1,000 feet away from a school or something like that. And I'm wondering, well, I'm not wondering, I'm thinking that, as we learn and we move forward, that those are the types of things that we need to be looking at.
That area of the law can be a bit tricky. We do review regulations that some of that is the state has covered the field and we don't have the power to issue our own local regulations. Some of that we can add more stringent regulations, and we're happy to review any policy that the town wants. From a basic land use perspective under the Dover Amendment, we try to work with the boards to develop a process so that a building inspector whose head might be spinning over a tremendous amount of information and controversy has the power to kick that maybe up to further analysis either through council or through an open hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals. I hate to put a single individual such as a building inspector in charge of such a massive decision that he may be unsure about when we can provide a certain amount of help. I mean, that is the way that we structure our services to the town. We don't charge by the hour, as you know. We try and have kind of more of a slate of preventative services. This fits squarely within that goal of ours. We don't want trouble to happen and then have you call us. We want to be there. We can't rewrite history on this one, and we're working with it to get it in the right posture, and I think we're doing as good a job as we can given the circumstances, but we want to be there to help you early on in the process.
Mr. Holmes? Mr. David?
Steve, this one.
Yeah, I guess I can try this one. Thank you very much, Jay. I'll tell you the same thing I told Rich last week, and it goes to some of your comments. I apologize on behalf of the town for putting you in this position. As Mr. Schneider just stated, this permit was issued back in April, and some of us were told that you were already working on this, and poor Mr. Bowen come in there about a week and a half ago, and we kind of avalanched on him. So I appreciate the work that you've done. My question in this whole process is, and I think that once this issue is resolved, as a board, I plan on bringing recommendations in terms of policy for the town, because obviously we can't allow these things to just go unmanaged. My question to you is this. We have this current issue in place. The Homeowners Association has taken their own legal track, but as a town, in terms of appealing at this point, it's still open, there's nobody in the building, they're just there doing work, we've issued them a building permit. I thought you mentioned that it was possible at this point to still take this to Zoning Board of Appeals. Is that true on behalf of the town? Or is it only true now on behalf of the individuals or the Homeowners Association?
Appealing the building permit more than 30 days out from the town's perspective may be difficult. There are still some appellate remedies, perhaps on the occupancy permit end on this, or it's conceivable that an occupancy permit may not even issue. I mean, there are risks and benefits with all those actions. I think the building inspector now has enough information, in my legal opinion, to make a decision as to whether or not he wants to issue that occupancy permit. Because the state building code says that you can't issue an occupancy permit unless you comply with zoning, same as a building permit requires. If he determines that it complies with zoning, then that act is in and of itself a potentially appealable act. If in fact he determines that it doesn't comply with zoning, likewise the facility itself could appeal that, and that would go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I don't want to be under any illusions here. These Dover Amendment cases are very hard.
And I guess, my other question was, during last Monday's meeting, one of the gentlemen from the representatives mentioned to the Homeowners Association, have you enforced these covenants in the past? And I think this is a good question, right? So that, and my question to you is the same question on behalf of the town. If we don't appeal this, or do something to prevent it causing an appeal, so we can get a clear definition on Dover, right? In terms of the town of Wareham in this particular situation, and we do nothing. And the homeowners, they do their thing, and then this goes in. When the next one comes along, we don't find out about it until there's an uproar in town. And then let's say we took your suggestion and we went a route towards an appeal on that, that would be discrimination, wouldn't it?
No, because we didn't do it on one and did it on the other.
Right.
No. And this comes up, we're all used to the fact that we read about court cases, and the Supreme Court made a lot of decisions recently, and they do something. What they do is precedent. When they make a decision, it's binding on the next court. Things that happen on a local permitting level, unless you do it 100 times in a row and change your mind on the 101st time, things that happen on a local permitting level do not create precedent, and that's the law. That's case law. Because zoning, you're not professionals, they're not courts, it's not an appeal that meets the level of the appellate courts, whether it be the Massachusetts Appeals Court, the Mass Supreme Judicial Court, or the Circuit Court of Appeals, or at the federal level. None of that binds future boards. A lot because times change, zoning conditions change, every project is unique in its own way, even if they might seem on the surface to be the same. And most importantly, board members change. So I always say you're not condemned to repeat the sins of the father. So you don't have to, if someone did it one way, it could be stylistic, it could have been wrong, you don't have to do it the same way. It does not create precedent.
Right.
And I'm very comfortable with that opinion.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Mr. Talaman. I have a couple questions, actually. Back in the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that the town is not the beneficiary of the restrictive covenant. That said, is the town of Wareham able to enforce these covenant restrictions?
No. Well, let me back up. Based upon the covenant that I've seen, and I've only seen one, and I'm aware of, looking at some of the documentation, that there may be others, at least two others. If those follow the same basic format, it looks like there was a covenant, then an amendment, then a confirmatory covenant. Assuming the language is the same, we don't have the requisite standing or jurisdiction to enforce the terms of those covenants.
However, the Homeowners Association can be the enforcement agent for these restrictive covenants.
It is quite clear that they have the authority to enforce those restrictions.
So if there could be a developer that complied with town zoning and had subsequently got permits. However, if the say, defied restrictive covenants, there's nothing that, well, there's little that the town can do, but there might be much that the homeowners association could do.
Yes. Now, there are situations in some types of permits where I do, when I help write a permit, I say, hey, you've got to make the town a beneficiary. The classic case is like a conservation permit where you have to maintain open space. So I retain the power of the town to enforce those covenants. These were more private restrictions based upon aesthetic considerations and future additions to developments that the town required that they impose, but did not require that the town become a party to them such that we had the right to enforce them.
I understand. So my other questions are, does this board have the authority to do anything, for example, to delay the occupancy permit? Does this Board of Selectmen?
I don't think so. Not, I mean, short of, it would be, I think you have to let the occupancy permit process shake out in terms of, could you intervene a little bit? Yes, I'd be more worried about intervention in an independent agency of your town's actions than anything else. I think that depending upon what happens at the occupancy permit level, because there's a requirement under that it comply with zoning, there's a potential authority there for various local entities to do something then. Intervening right now, I think would, A, I'd be concerned about heavy-handedness on your appointed officials, and B, I'm not sure there's a mechanism I could create for you to do that at this point. There is no present occupancy. It's been more than 30 days since the building permit issued, which the board would have had some form of notice of. So I don't have a tool at this point in my toolkit to make a challenge.
So going forward, the discussion you previously had with Member Winslow, would this board be responsible for crafting a policy, since that's what we do, we craft policies in conjunction with legal counsel in order to address maybe upcoming situations such as this?
You're as good a candidate as any other board to craft a policy, and because it involves potentially multiple entities in the town, the zoning board, the building services, potentially affordable housing groups within under your control, it'd be as good a place to start as any. I think we'd probably invite a few different people to the table to try and work on a process so that the next time one of these comes along, or an agricultural one, or a religious exemption case comes along, it fits into a track and we're all informed quickly and we get the right process on board.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from the board? Steve?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'm very concerned about that man's statement. It just keeps rumbling around in my head for some reason. I'm very concerned about treating one person one way and another group another way.
You should be concerned about it. It's a matter of...
If I was a member, if I lived on Lynn Road and I came into the building department and applied for a permit, and the building inspector denied my permit because my homeowners association has covenants, and I had to go to the homeowners association because that little box got checked off apparently, and I go back home and I have to go to the homeowners association to get a signed agreement and come back to the building inspector and say, here you go, I got my sign off from the homeowners association. Building permit gets issued, right? It's one way. Or I come into the building department and they say, you're part of Lynn Road, you have a homeowners association, they have covenants, we'll issue the permit based on you getting a signature from that homeowners association, and then, somebody else comes in and they come in for a building permit, there's no mention of covenants. So we have three groups of people coming in, and the process changes for all of them. So when you get into civil rights, every side has an argument, right? So my concern is that everybody gets treated the same, And if they haven't been, is that a problem?
Well, you've added another element to that, and that is the civil rights. In terms of the precedent setting, in terms of making a decision based upon purely on zoning, as I mentioned before, you're not bound to do what the prior building inspector did or zoning board did. That being said, you're still bound to make the correct decision. So there's a separate process to appeal.
Just as it's just a technical matter. I make a motion to go beyond the hour 10.
Motion made and second to go beyond hour 10. All in favor?
Aye. I apologize.
Unanimous?
So you're still bound to do the right thing. So if on the third time in the building inspector blows it, there's a remedy there for the person who was the victim of that in terms of getting corrective action. When you throw on the overlay of civil rights, and I think Rich can chime in here if he likes, it adds a whole separate area in terms of the level of inquiry. There really has to be an element of bad faith or malice for it to rise to the level of civil rights. I mean, the cases are quite clear on that. It's not enough for someone to screw up. Otherwise, we'd get sued probably more than we like, because I represented a lot of towns, and you know what? Mistakes are made. A lot of volunteers on a lot of boards, people make mistakes. If we got sued for civil rights every time, I can only imagine what the appropriations and the insurance premiums would be like. So you have to go a step further. So the building inspector does something one way, one with the first person, slightly different second person, third person comes in, doesn't even check the box. Someone suing in civil rights has to do something more than say, hey, you screwed up. They've got to prove that you had an axe to grind with that person. There was malice. There was bad faith. It has to raise itself to a whole other level. She has to shock the conscience, as Rich just said. You really have to push the envelope on that. That doesn't mean that sometimes people don't sue when they don't have a reason in civil rights, and it still stinks being a defendant, especially if you're named in your individual capacity rather than your official capacity. But the level of proof is much harder if you throw a civil rights action in there. And Rich and I have both, the first thing we do when we get civil rights cases in the office and we get them in is test via a motion to dismiss whether or not it reaches that bad faith, malice, shocking level, and try and get rid of the civil rights parts first, and then, okay, once we get rid of those, we can deal with just the basic zoning mistakes. Again, is there a fact pattern that you could make right now where I'd say, yeah, that one gives me some trouble because it looks like they didn't like that particular homeowner for whatever reason? There is those things, and we have to look out for them. We're not absolved 100% from concerns over that when we do things differently for different people. But the vanilla decision to make a discretionary decision, I'm going to give a permit here, and 10 years later I don't give the same permit, that doesn't worry me as much because it's not a per se precedent-setting event.
Thanks, Jim.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Winslow.
I have one more comment. But if we had a policy that was crafted in the manner in which you said, with the boards involved and yourself involved, then everybody would be treated the same. There'd be no question.
Well,
because the policy would have to be followed. I mean, I don't think that any of us, are sitting up here saying, we're out to get one, but I think that this situation in and of itself brings up an issue that's community-wide. It affects the community as a whole. And I think we want to make sure that not only is the town's interest protected, but that the residents who quite frankly put us in these seats and expect us to represent them, that their interests are also respected and protected.
Right. And you make a good point. Certainly a policy. I wish I had a toolkit that had a foolproof set of policies that I could have a town adopt, and it would absolve us from any problems in the future. A policy will limit the level of controversy and will catch problems before they start. Nothing's foolproof, though. And this business tells Rich and I that problems still happen, but we think we can reduce a lot of them, and we also think we can as I think you suggest, put people's minds at ease a little bit when something arises, that we're going to catch it quicker, involve more people, and have a discussion in a more deliberate way rather than at 11th hour or
a proactive discussion.
Yes.
I mean,
Proactive,
we're having a
preemptive.
reactive discussion,
Yes.
and that's a much more difficult discussion to have.
Agreed.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure how to go about ensuring that this happens. Maybe we need to schedule some type of workshop meeting, and I would suggest we do that early in the fall. I know it's difficult with vacation schedules and, you know, getting all these different boards together, but I'd really like to see us work towards accomplishing that goal.
Well, I think what we could do is get with Rich and to schedule it between him and the town administrator, and the fall may be a good idea. The sooner the better.
Whenever, wherever is convenient for you all, you guys let us know when you want us here, what you're looking for. We can do drafts, we can show up at meetings, start with a round table, develop a draft. I don't think this is particularly heavy lifting to develop this type of policy.
Have policy, will travel.
Yeah. But we can get you in the right place in this.
Well, if it can be done quicker, you know, whatever we need to do to get the ball rolling, so that in the future there's a process and we're all familiar with the process.
Happy to do it whenever.
Thank you.
Okay, in the meantime, can you temporarily make up a draft?
Happy to do it. For this particular subject matter, I have a very simple template that, you know, I want to know. I'll want to know a little bit more about which staff, and I can work with the building department who gets to see which things. But I think we can work on a very simple starting template that'll get the ball moving, and we'll kind of add some teeth to it as we go. That's not a problem. I could do that. I could turn that around relatively quickly, and if, you know, whenever we get these meetings together, if it's later in the summer or the fall or what have you, we can get all this done.
Okay, I appreciate it very much. If there are any more questions from the board. Well, I appreciate everybody from Lynn Road coming here and being patient and listen to our attorneys. You have all the information that we can give you right now. I don't know if our attorney and their attorney had corresponded, but we're going to wait and see what we can do towards this Lynn Road. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify for the audience, the discussion that appears on the agenda is a discussion amongst the board members with the council. It's not a discussion. We're not going to have questions or comments. I would direct them to the town administrator. And you can copy the board.
Sorry, go ahead.
My name is Sean Murphy, 17 Lynn Road. I know that the citizens' participation had gone and passed. And if I was aware of that, I would have made my statements earlier. I have two requests. I will make it brief that I'd like to put before the board, if you don't mind. My first request is that on last Tuesday we had a meeting. We were going to be given town council a legal opinion, which he delivered tonight. I do appreciate town council for giving that us as well. On Friday of last week, we went to the building inspector's department to request the informational cards on a couple of different residents in that neighborhood. Now, it was my understanding from the last meeting that we had that the board was in full cooperation with the residents of Lynn Road to provide any information that we had requested Mr. Cruz said that no occupancy permit would be issued until this was resolved, and that he encouraged the residents to provide any information and forthcoming to town council that could be beneficial to this matter. I am still waiting for those informational cards. I would like to make a request respectfully that the Board of Selectmen vote right now to provide me those informational cards tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, I think they open, what time they open? Right. It is public information. It's available. So just go right down to whatever time you want to get there. I think they close at 10 too. So they have a certain hour they open. So you can go down there and we'll make sure that the town administrator talks to the chief of the building department and get your request.
Mr. Cruz, I have a copy of the application we filled out on Friday for that information, and it was voiced to us that that information would be provided in roughly 5 to 10 days. This is a time-sensitive matter. I do not want to go through the town administrator or the building inspector. The Board of Selectmen have the power right now to grant me that request. This is a request. Respectfully request you, yes or no, the Board of Selectmen to provide me that information tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning.
The Board of Selectmen is telling you right now to go down there tomorrow and get whatever you need from the building department. And what do you need? You need the permits for certain...
whatever information that I require...
Well, it's not whatever. Write down what you need. And I'm not going to say make it brief, but make it concise, and then we'll give it to you. If it's been holding you up, we're here to alleviate the problem, and we're going to alleviate it. Because before we make a decision, as I said last week, we want to make sure that we're protected, not only as the town, but you're protected also. It's just like you need to be protected. So if you need that information, it will be provided for you. There's public information that's requested. Normal, the thing is you have to put a Freedom of Information Act in. But for this one, we're going to let you go down and whatever the cards, 4 or 5 cards, you said it was 5 or 4?
It's specific cards that we requested on that day, also permits. So whatever cards that we would need, any informational cards on that development and any permits that were issued for that development
now,
is what I'm looking
let's
for.
Let's be precise. I don't know how many developments, how many buildings you have in that property.
There is 21 homes in that subdivision.
I think you said 5. So let's go with 5 instead of pulling all 20-something.
That's fine with me, and any permits that were issued for that subdivision as well.
Okay. Get the 5, put the application in, and we'll give you the rest.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. My second request is that town council be encouraged to look into this matter, to continue to look into this matter, which we do appreciate, and to look at any means, utilize any resources that are available to them to stop this home coming in from 7 Lynn Road.
Okay, town council is looking, they're in this for both of us. But right now, they're protecting the town and telling us what we can do and what we cannot do. If you have an attorney and they want to correspond to each other, that's fine.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
I'll take...
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, I'll take one more, Mr. Roper. I'm giving you, since you gave me such a big help earlier, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Philip Miles, by the way. I live on Roby.
I got the wrong name. Okay.
That's okay. I had a question for the board. Learned Counsel was very good, and I think very provided good advice in terms of being proactive and preemptive in the future regarding the Dover Amendment and issues like educational purposes being taken at the facility versus off the facility. Selectwoman Winslow made, I thought, a very good comment that really I didn't hear an answer to, and that was, it seemed as though Council was suggesting the only tangent from the town through the zoning board might be that if educational activities were not taking place, or a de minimis amount of educational activities were not taking place there, then the zoning board in the future might have the opportunity to go back and revoke the approval that they provided. Ms. Winslow brought up the point that there had been conflicting information from a time period ago till relatively recently, I believe, about whether or not there was going to be education taking place on the facility versus off the facility. So my question would be, would the board respectfully consider asking town council if that information that Selectwoman Winslow provided would be worth investigating to determine if there was truly prima facie evidence now that would suggest that education was not going to be taking place on the facility. And if that were then the case, would that allow the zoning board now, in this circumstance, to abrogate what they did and go back and change the current
Is town
situation?
council still here, or he isn't?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, thank you very much.
I believe that
That's it, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to answer the gentleman's question because I think town council had left. What town council had said previous was that if people had information that they were welcome, you can send it to town council. I was referencing a tape that I believe was made that morning. Whoever has that tape, if they want to bring it to the town administrator's office and ask him to forward that on. And town council said that this is going to be an ongoing process, that they're going to continue to look at it. So, but that's what I'm saying. We think there is. So whoever has the tape, please bring a copy to the town administrator's office to be forwarded to town council, who can listen to the tape and determine if in fact what they said that day is conflicting with the information that they received. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, and the next agenda is...
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make one comment. Not that it's of any real significance as far as helping the homeowners on Lynn Road, but the gentleman made a public records request for some documents through the building department, and I would like to make a motion that if there are if any fees related to that document request, that they be waived.
Motion made, second to...
I never heard a word. Never heard a word.
If there's any fees related
Didn't understand a word.
I would like to make a motion that any document fees related to the public records request that the gentleman just made before us be waived with respect to the building permit issue.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 4-0-0. Okay, the next one is sewer business, discussion of sewer contract number 3.
Mr. Chair, are we going to do any other town business?
Contract number 3 is now coming up.
That would be no.
It's supposed to be any other town business.
Contract number 3. Where's Mr. Gifford? Mr. Gifford?
He was, the other is.
Where's Steve go?
Mike Judici? Would you like to have another mic on the table? One's good enough? One mic?
You might want to wait a second till they leave, Mr. Cruz.
We're going to pause a few minutes and let the crowd exit, and then we'll continue. Ellen, you want to take over?
Me? Why? You have to run out?
You know where I am.
Where's the clerk? I'm the clerk? What? Oh, no.
Where's Walter going?
I think we're going to recess for 5 minutes because we don't have a clerk, and now our chair just left. Okay. Okay,
Excuse me. Please. How old are we here? Mr. Judici, would you like to start, please?
Sure.
Mr. Judici?
For the record, I'm Mike Judici from CDM. Just want to report back the latest developments in the Contract 3 sewer project. As you know, we opened bids on June 16th for construction of the contract. We received 9 bids ranging from approximately $2.9 million to $3.9 million for the contract. Since the bid was open, the apparent low bidder actually submitted a request to withdraw his bid. So the current apparent low bidder is a bid of about, as I said, $2.9 million for that
Mr.
contract.
Judici, can I just
Yes.
interrupt you? There's 2 items on the agenda. One is to extension of the CDM contract, which, did we address that yet? And the second is discussion of sewer contract number 3. I'm just confused. Are we?
I was asked to present an update on Contract 3. I'm sorry,
Okay.
ma'am. I apologize. So for Contract 3, we opened bids several weeks ago. There was a public meeting that was held this past Saturday in this room in order for the town to get feedback from the residents of the 2 areas, Agawam Beach and Mayflower Ridge, and to present to them what the estimated betterments for that contract would be. As you know, the largest piece of that betterment calculation is the construction cost, so we were directed after the public meeting in February to put the contract out to bid so that we had a real bid number as opposed to a construction cost estimate in order to make that calculation. Based on that bid price and the other factors in the overall cost, the estimated betterment was determined to be around $32,000 per property in Contract 3.
Questions from the board? Mrs. Winslow?
Thank you, Mrs. Begley. I don't have any questions per se about the bids. We got, the report, and I know that we've all received the emails for and against this project. This isn't an easy seat to sit in because there are a number of issues that come up with this project. And obviously the biggest being the cost. $32,000 is more than the average per capita income in Wareham. That's a humongous number. But on the other side of the coin, there is the issue of clean water, and there is the issue of the replacement of septic systems should they fail in that area, which is also quite costly. I'm wondering what other solutions we might have as opposed to traditional soaring, which is very expensive. If there are other solutions to accomplish the same goal, and perhaps not necessarily today, keep in mind that, this isn't something we got to do right this second. But I will say that I do think, and I say this not just for Mayflower and Agawam, I think as much of this town as we can get on some type of sewer, whether it's at our wastewater treatment plant or it's package plants, whether it's working together with private developers and developing public-private partnerships, we need to do that because we are a community surrounded by water, filled with water. We talk about nitrogen in the bay, you've got phosphorus in our ponds. These are serious issues and we need to address them. So are there other options available to us to help these folks out, and what would you suggest?
It's coming in and out. We had this problem on Saturday as well. You raised obviously a lot of very good, valid questions and concerns. The task that we were given was to proceed with the design and sewer systems in these 7 neighborhoods under this recent version of the CWMP. In terms of other alternatives, there was an analysis done as part of the original CWMP just in terms of how you would sewer, the different sewering technologies. The system that was selected was based on, amongst other things, the most cost-effective way to sewer these areas. In terms of other areas in town that aren't currently sewered, certainly I'm sure there are many others. To do an evaluation of the rest of the town or other parts of the town would mean you'd start that CWMP process, Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan process, over again, which is certainly an option at this point.
And I just want to say, I don't want to reinvent the wheel here, but I think that there are options that are available to us today that may not have been available back when the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Program was originally put together. I know, for example, that I live out in East Wareham, and right over the Plymouth line, they're building River Run. A.D. Makepeace is building River Run, and there's a package plant, and they're going to be looking for effluent, and that would be the perfect opportunity to sewer that area of town. And I realize it's not something that happens overnight, but you've got a large number of bodies of water in that area. The whole area is on septic. Some of those septic systems or old cesspools now lie in what is a water table because of some of the development. That would be not a bad thing for that area of the community. And people are going to pay for this one way or another. I mean, when you sell your house, if your septic isn't Title V compliant, then you have to put a new one in. My house, when they put one in, it was over $25,000. They can be very expensive in some areas of town. I happen to live on a little pond. But I want to make sure that we're looking at all our options that we have, and that we're making decisions that benefit the greatest number of people in the community. That's all. Thank you. Your turn.
Good evening, gentlemen. I also share the concern about the costs for all of these projects.
Can't hear you.
But I would like it if you could expound a little bit upon the historical costs of betterments and how these costs today would compare to costs 5 years out if this project was done. Can you put a number on that? Would it be 3% a year increase in costs for those same residents?
In a typical economy, you would carry probably a 3 to 5% inflation factor for construction. Obviously, we're in unique times right now in terms of the economy, and the price that you receive for these for this area, as well as contracts 1 and 2, were very competitive at a time of historic low construction costs. It's obviously difficult to predict what's going to happen 1, 2, 3, or 5 years out, but in a general sense, you would typically carry a 3 to 5% escalation factor per year.
Okay. And just so I'm clear also, in reading the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, it's my understanding that if we don't move forward with these 2 areas, it effectively binds the town's hands as far as storing other areas absent a new Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. Is that correct? So essentially, we wouldn't be able to provide additional sewer service to, say, the BDOD, A.D. Makepeace Company. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. These areas, 4 other neighborhoods could be sewered, whether it was a complete new comprehensive wastewater management plan or at the minimum of notice of project change, which is a vehicle that you can use as part of the MEPA process to make changes to previous submittals. It would depend on what the nature of the change was, if it was doing other areas in lieu of these two areas or in addition to these two areas would impact what process you'd have to take.
And so, at the end of the day, this the comprehensive wastewater management plan is the final environmental notification form that was submitted for the town to the department, to the Mass DEP. So, in essence, would we be in violation of the agreement with DEP if we did not move forward with sewering these two sections?
I'm sorry.
Would we be in violation of the environmental notification form filed with DEP if we didn't move forward with sewering these two areas?
No, I mean the purpose of that plan was to permit what was planned. If you don't proceed with the plans, you're not in violation of the permit. You're just not exercising your right to build what you had planned based on the permit that was approved.
Okay. And currently, if the project were to move forward today, we would, the residents in those areas would be able to take advantage of reduced interest rates. But am I to understand correctly that would end going forward, reduced interest rates on the betterments? Is there an expiration period for that reduced interest rate?
Yes and no. What's sort of driving this decision that needs to be made is these areas included as part of one SRF application, State Revolving Fund application with DEP. That loan was first, or the application was first taken out in 2007. So the directive from the state was that if you were to proceed with this contract, you need to make a decision before the end of this fiscal year. So June 30th is the date that they're looking for a decision. Now, if you do not decide to proceed, that doesn't mean SRF monies aren't available in a future year. It's a reapplication process for these areas or other areas or whatever path the town decides. You can reapply to get on that SRF list. It comes out every year. It is a competitive process, but just given the nature of the situation in Wareham and typically coastal communities, they score high on that list so that they're able to receive that 2% SRF funding.
Okay. And the 20-year pro forma that was identified in the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan for the sewer user charges, if we were not to move forward with these two areas, how would that impact the costs of maintaining the current plant? If the question is, this entire comprehensive wastewater management plan, the financial aspect of it, was based on sewering all 12 areas. If we don't move forward with these two areas, what is the financial impact on the user fees to the other sewer users and the capital costs associated with the wastewater treatment plant?
Well, the EDU rate is the EDU rate of running the treatment plant on a yearly basis. So that's set by, that's driven by what it physically actually costs us to run that plant. The EDU rate is what it is. If we do not sewer, it doesn't affect it because obviously I'm not going to take on more costs. So the EDU rate should stay pretty steady. That being said, I think the second part of your question is how does the capital cost? I can't answer that because we're using some of the money for Project 3 for the bidding. And I don't know how that's going to work because we don't have the SRF funding for Contract 3, but we're always already using the money from Contract 3. And I don't know how that works. I'm sure we can straighten that out, and Mike can probably speak to that better than I can. Excuse me. So the capital cost, I can't answer. I really don't know how that's going to work. But there is money being spent right now out of Contract 3 because we have to pay for his time and energy to produce those numbers for us. That's for sure. But I did want to say, I agree with Mrs. Winslow that sewer is very important. And as a director of the sewer department, I always say let's sewer, point blank, because it's in the best interest of the community. But the question of $32,000, I understand. And to answer your question, Ms. Winslow, I wanted to point to that directly. There are many options, some of them good, some of them bad, but I was thinking of one of the options is adding more property. I spoke to Mr. Judici about bringing some other property into it, like maybe Gateway Shores or something, and maybe we can do it under the present comprehensive wastewater plan and not have to do another NEPA study or anything like that, or even another wastewater comprehensive plan. Find a way, if the state would allow us to, and he thought they may. He didn't have any definitive on that, but it's something we should look into. So if we can add more property, then guess what? We can drive down the cost of the betterment. So that's an option. So if we suspended what we're doing now and said, okay, we're not going to abandon the project, but let's just take our breath, catch our breath, stop for a minute, ask the state if we can do this, bring other properties in, and see what that cost is going to be, and see if we can lower the general cost to both projects, and maybe, just maybe, lower the $32,000. And we get two things, because first of all, Mr. Judici is absolutely correct. Technically, until the present comprehensive wastewater plan is completed. And we got to be careful because that plant was designed for 1.56 million gallons, and that 20-year plan that we went through this comprehensive wastewater meets that number. So if we start sewering other things, we're going to be in trouble, like AD Makepeace projects or whatever, so we may be in trouble.
Mr. Campina, just to be clear,
yeah.
I'm not talking about soaring AD Makepeace.
No, I'm not talking about that. No, I'm just saying the comprehensive wastewater plan says that before we sewer other areas, we must sewer the 12. So we got to be careful. We got to be careful. That's all I'm saying.
So
because we have limited capacity.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So are you saying to me that if we sat down with AD Makepeace and devised one of these public-private partnerships, which communities all over the Commonwealth are doing today, and the state is actually putting mechanisms in place so that communities can do it even easier, that DEP would say, no, you can't soar East Wareham because you...
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
No, that's not what I'm saying, because I was probably in a meeting with you. I was part of that where I would like to see AD Makepeace or any private contractor go in partnerships with the government to produce areas like East Wareham. We're talking specifically along the Agawam River because this is driven by quality of water. And I'm not an expert, but the attenuation, all that stuff where you are, doesn't have the impact that Gateway Shores may have, or Mayflower Ridge may have, or Agawam may have, because that was what drove this whole thing. So let's be clear about that. This is why we are where we are. But to answer specifically to Agawam and Mayflower, how do we get that $32,000 down? And what I suggest, in speaking with Mr. Judici earlier, is maybe looking at other areas like Gateway, because it's close enough, where we can have the state give us permission to include that under the existing comprehensive wastewater plan, providing we have the gallons, and that would be his expertise to make sure that happens. My point is to drive the cost down for the present, because I would like to sewer the two areas in question, but the question is the cost. So that's where I'm going with that. And secondly, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that I think that it is a good idea for us to take a breath and step back and see what our options are here. But I guess I'm saying it's really time for us to look outside the box and to not look at traditional sewer, which is $1 million a mile, sorry, it's getting late.
It's the system.
And to look more into these types of opportunities. I mean, I'm not suggesting that that's an opportunity for this particular area of town, but perhaps combining them with, like you said, or maybe, you know, I just think it's time for us to have a real frank conversation about what we're going to do. And I understand the wastewater treatment. I get all that. But what are we going to do as a community as a whole to address this problem going forward, not just for these folks here? Sewer isn't going to get cheaper. If 10 years from now we're going to sewer more areas of town, you could be looking at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 betterments.
I agree. But
So I think we have to attack the problem, which is a community-wide problem. It's not a Mayflower, Agawam problem. I mean, it is right now tonight, but
it's specifically tonight, it's their
it's
problem.
a community problem from a number of different avenues. I guess I just want to be clear about that piece of
No, I
it.
understand that, and I think specifically speaking to what's in front of us now, the question is, do we move forward at $32,000, or what are our options? I think that's what we're trying to decide tonight. And all I was saying is that maybe we step back, not abandon the project, but maybe step back and look at these other options. Maybe Mr. Judici can contact the state and say, hey, listen, if we add some other properties to this present comprehensive wastewater management plan, can we go and maybe... And then the bottom line is lowering the betterment, because that's what we're talking about. How do we make it affordable for these people? I think that's the question we're trying to figure out here. Because I don't think anybody in this room will say we don't need sewer. I think we agree that we need sewer, but the question is affordability. I think that's what's troubling. That's what we're trying to address. So that's one way. And the other way, I think we step back and we look at things maybe, as some other communities could do, have done as research, is cap betterments. And so, okay, this is the max betterment, and anything greater than that, whatever that number is, the community picks it up, because, after all, the entire community benefits from anything we do with water. If I clean up Onset, you swim there. If I clean up any of these things, we swim there, we shellfish there. It becomes a community gain. We all gain, not just the individual that's paying for the betterment or paying the yearly fee for sewer, the whole community. So that's an option. So all I'm saying is if we take our breath, suspend what we're doing. Let's not get so crazy about getting this done, because I don't think anybody wants it at $32,000. Let's not abandon the idea because we should sewer, but let's catch our breath and look at other options. See if we can drive that $32,000 down. And if we find these options, then we can move forward at that point. We may lose the specific SRF funding, but if we can drive the cost down with adding, as an example, Gateway Shores, then we'll apply again. It may not be 2%, but it may be 2.5%, maybe 3%. I don't know. That's all I'm saying. And I think then everybody can be satisfied, because we can get our sewering at a reasonable cost, and not put a great burden on any individual area of community. Because there was 3 areas in this particular SRF fund, and we go from $15,000 to $32,000, and you know, there's a lot of questions of quality and equitability. So that's all I'm saying. Let's look for a way to make it affordable for the folks that, because there are people in Agawam, trust me, need sewer. There are people that are going to need sewer. And I've got the reports on the quality of the water. We can say it's good, but it's been deteriorating since that report came out as a good quality in the Onset Bay. There's a report out now that says it's actually deteriorating by the year. Affordable. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Campina. Basically what you're talking about is adding another large area to be sewered.
Yeah, something like, because that's a larger area, and we'd need permission from DEP, but I think it's doable. I think I spoke to Mr. Judici about something like this, and the reason why I suggest that area is because we're sewering presently in the Oakdale area, and then we can come under the bay, you know, and then grab Oakdale and bring it to the plant. So that's why I suggested that area, because we're there. I mean, it made the most sense.
Well, I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
First, in looking at the CWWMP,
yes,
it specifically states that we have enough sewer capacity to sewer the 12 areas that are identified as priority needs.
Yes.
It questions going forward it discusses our ability to provide additional capacity for growth and infill within those priority areas. When we get into larger projects and adding larger areas, there's no certainty with respect to whether we have sufficient capacity.
Well, we know that we had a report done recently that indicated we have approximately 160,000, 170,000 gallons after the entire comprehensive wastewater management plan was complete. And that's factored into 1.56 million because of a load into the bay. So we know that. So this is a given number. We also know we have factual numbers in I&I that we're going after. And that could be another 150,000 gallons. So we have actual numbers. So the question is what's going to be needed for Gateway? So we determine that number. And then we say, this is what we need for Gateway. Do we have the available capacity? And we also have to be concerned with the 80% because our permit states 80% of capacity. So we need to really crunch some numbers. And I don't have those numbers in front of me to give you a specific answer, but looking generally speaking, we should be able to meet the 186 within that community. And why I suggest that is because if Mr. Giudice goes, and I think he could do that easily, and if the state allows us to expand this present comprehensive wastewater management plan, then guess what? We don't have to do another one, and it's not going to be as costly if we abandon it and start another 20-year program. So we could, A, complete our comprehensive wastewater management plan that we've been doing quite consistently, and I give the board credit for that because the board, you folks and the other boards before you had to make some tough decisions because even $15,000 the average person can't afford. That's the bottom line. But my point is that we have a chance to continue what you've started, completing the 12, and maybe adding something else to make it affordable, because I think that's what we're talking about now, affordability. That's the bottom line. How do we make it affordable? We need to, and that's just one of the ways. And the second way is to, again, cap it and say, okay, the betterment's going to be $22,000. That's capped for anybody, any future plans, and the balance to be paid for by the taxpayers, and that would take an active town meeting vote. And that could be done at town meeting. Town meeting says that's a great idea. We can move forward. And then guess what? Now there's a cap. They pick up the difference. So now again, we're back to affordability. And even if we go on, we're doing other crazy things like we're trying to give water to CMAS. And let's say we succeed and we give them 500,000 gallons a day. So now we have capacity again. So we're going to have the same issues. So we're going to have betterment issues again. So that may be a long-term solution. Even if we went in partnerships with somebody else, we still got to do infrastructure that costs money. So if this cap concept could be for the long term. So these are different types of decisions we can make. But my point is, if we catch our breath, stop right now, catch our breath and look at these and see what's viable, and then come back at it. If we came back and said we're going to move forward and it's $32,000, okay. But I think at least we should attempt to try to lower that fee, because I personally want a sewer because we need it. No ifs, ands, and buts about it, not only for now but for the future. I just have a hard time with $32,000. If it was me in that neighborhood, it would be quite a bit of money for me to come up with, even over 20 years. So that's all I'm saying. How do we find a viable economic way to get sewer done? And that was my suggestion, is looking at some other area like Gateway, and they're right on the river. Not only would that be a great idea to lower costs, but they're on the river. And I know we have systems that really need some attention, so the town's going to get a double bang. We're going to lower rates for everybody, and we're going to get that area taken care of, which is going to contribute to a better bay and bayment area that we're trying to clean up anyway. So that's why I'm suggesting that. That'd be my suggestion. Certainly, you guys are the ones that are going to make the decision, and I respect that. I work for you, and you tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. Don't misunderstand that. It's just a suggestion and an idea of how we may be able to get there and accomplish all our goals, get everything sewered, but make a reasonable cost to the folks that are going to be sued. That's why I'm suggesting it. The only reason I'm suggesting it.
Well, I spent the weekend, this beautiful weekend, reading this. And this was the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan Single Environmental Report. And this has been in existence since March of 2002. They had public hearings. There's all kinds of things. This is the who, what, why, when, how of sewering. And what I found extremely interesting was in 2002, they had estimated costs per contract. And the total for Mayflower Ridge and Agawam that was estimated in 2002 was $3,133,000. Now it's 2.9 is the best estimate that we got. That came as quite a shock to me. and I understand that it's not as densely populated. So in 2002, because there wasn't a whole lot of growth in those areas, the estimate was still between $30,000 and $38,000 that we got in February. I think that you have some valuable suggestions, Mr. Campina, but I would have really appreciated hearing them, or even sitting from that side, especially from sitting from that side, in March or April. It's kind of uncomfortable to try to figure out what to do because we have 2 days to do it. We have to make a decision because we have 2 days. There's a chance that the cost of the project won't go down. There's a very good chance that it'll still be $32,000 and then some, because there's also a chance that we won't get 2% funding. It could be 6% funding. We have to go through a permitting process, I would imagine, in order to add any other areas. First, we have to identify the areas. Then we have to have public hearings, because there are going to be lots of people in those areas. Some are going to be for it. Some are going to be vocally against it. Some may, because they didn't know that they were on a sewer plan, may have already upgraded their septic systems with very, very expensive systems. As we all know, none of this comes cheaply. And the people in these areas knew sewer was coming. So some may have, I've heard from, this has been in existence since 2002. There was a vote in 1997 at town meeting, at Board of Selectmen meeting, I beg your pardon. And in 2006, $20 million was voted at town meeting to expend monies for this particular sewer project that included all of these areas. So it's, you know, that's, the information has been here. We have to complete the project. I mean, can you give me any kind of estimate or what the process would be to ask to have this modified in any way? The length of time that would be involved, the amount of money, because none of this is free, pulling these permits. And if we do pay for these, where does that money come from? Does that come from Contract 3 because we're amending Contract 3? So do we add this on to their betterments? The town certainly shouldn't be footing the bill. Now, my other question, I have a lot of questions. So one of my other questions is, I know that there's been some discussion about whether or not A.D. Makepeace was given kind of carte blanche for some sewer capacity. We're committed to these areas, really these areas only, by this particular document. So we may have made agreements with other agencies in the town that do have an interest in what our capacity is. So we are committed to providing access to Mayflower Ridge and Agawam, and then what's left, we're going to have some developers that are going to be kind of duking it out over this. We've already had Walmart that has requested a certain capacity. We have A.D. Makepeace requesting a certain capacity. We're talking about increasing development in town. Well, I don't know if it would be a private on-site sewer or if it would be requesting capacity from our current sewer plant. We financed a huge upgrade for the sewer for just this project. So I'm not saying that other areas don't need to be sewered. They sure do. But I think that we're going to have the same kinds of public hearings. We're going to have the same kind of, we're going to have people that are very upset with us, and we're going to have some people that welcome it with open arms. I mean, it's always going to be controversial because it's extraordinarily expensive.
No outbursts from the audience, please. Are you finished, Mr. Baker? Are you finished?
I asked the questions about the permits, etc. The process. Don't wiggle the wire. No. Yeah, don't touch the wire. It's not working.
That's the same one you had Saturday, but that's the same night.
Do you want this one?
There you go. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. As I indicated earlier, because you have the approval of MEPA, which is the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, any changes you would want to make would have to go through that process again. There are certain thresholds, if you're below which there's a different process. One of the thresholds, for instance, is if it's less than 10 miles of additional pipeline. Another threshold is if it's less than 10% of an increase in flow. As long as you stay below those thresholds, you're not kicked into a full-blown environmental impact report. You can proceed with what's called a notice of project change that I alluded to earlier. So that process is less cumbersome, still involves a fair amount of work because you have to evaluate these areas or areas that you'd wanted to add in the same as you would have under a comprehensive wastewater management plan. So there is a fair amount of effort involved in that. In terms of a time frame, it's probably at least a 6 or 8 month process, and I'm just trying to give you a general sense. It's nothing that happens in several weeks. Costs, I wouldn't want to try to give you a number without having looked at it and asked, but it's not a cheap process. I mean, it's a fair amount of work to evaluate another area.
Is there a possibility that, again, so we would extend the permit to another area, say it fit the criteria and it was less than 10 miles of pipeline. It's another area that isn't quite as densely populated. So now we do have, which is a good thing, we have more areas of the town that are sewered. But because it's not densely populated, you add $1 million to the whole project, and now we're going to say to people, remember how we said 32,000? Well, now that's 38 or that's 40,000. Is that a possibility?
It's obviously a function of the density of the area, as you indicated. Certainly, to extend into another area adds to the construction costs, no doubt. It adds to the design costs to design the system in the first place. So there are added costs to pick up the area. As long as the density is greater than the areas that are currently included, just by simple mathematics, the cost would come down, but how much it would come down is a function of how much more dense it is.
You say it would come down, but if it was more dense, absolutely. I mean, that's just, we're all guessing here. But we're saying that it might come down. However, the costs of the permitting process, there's going to be a study phase. Then there's a design phase. Then we go through the whole process kind of again with public hearings and that kind of thing. So those costs are tacked on to Project 3B or whatever we would call it. So none of this is free. So all of that gets tacked on, and we're hopeful that it's densely enough populated that it would factor in that everybody's betterment would be less. But there's a chance that it could be the same, if not more, because of these additional costs.
Certainly a possibility, depending on the area and what the cost is to serve it. Absolutely. Yeah, I would not sit here and guarantee you that adding another area would decrease the cost without having any idea what area we're talking about or what it would take to get it permitted or get it designed and constructed. That's something that would need to be looked at, certainly.
Thank you. And just as an aside, to speak to anyone that's here that purchased their home after 2002 and had to get a Title V because the Title V, and it was a failed septic system, and you were not told about that, I am deeply sorry, because I find that extremely irresponsible of whoever was involved with that sale.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry, Bob. No, I think it's in the front.
Go ahead, Mr. Winslow.
are you looking for a motion now? Are you looking for a motion now? A motion. Or did we get everybody?
No, I don't think Mr. Holmes did. You have a
Oh,
comment?
okay.
No, well, I haven't said anything yet, but on the sewer, I know when we first estimated this, it was 37,000. We drop it down to 32. Can you hear? Yeah, yeah. Right, so we first said it was 37, now we got it down to 32,000. I know it's still high. Now, someone had mentioned putting a cap on it. Suppose we had a cap of 30, no matter what it comes. So, well, I'm just asking, hold it. I'm just asking the question because we're going to take a motion on this pretty quick. So, you know, we could do a cap. I know there's no way with the cost it is now to get it down to 15 or 20 or whatever, even Oakdale. So that possibility is out. If you go to 30, it's whatever it is, 120 a month, 130 a month, or whatever. But that's one possibility. If you don't want it, it's up to you. We are taking the vote, and if it goes, we are taking the vote, and if it goes back up, if it going whatever you're going, they have legislation trying to pass now in the town. The clean water with nitrogen. What's going to happen if you have a Title V now and it fails? It's going to cost you twice as much to put a new system in, plus you got to maintain it. So, well, that's all I brought to bring up to you. Something to think about. If you don't want it, it's up to you. It's going to be a closed deal. Any other questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Winslow?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to table this project to a future date.
Motion made and second to table a future date. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, I'm going to take a roll call on this just to make sure who's who. Kara?
Aye.
Mike? Steve? He said no. Steve? Yes. Ellen? 2 and 2, and I moved the table it to another future time. And so yes, so that's 3-2. Hold the applause.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have one other thing on the sewer.
Mr. Chair. Earlier tonight when we cut
Another thing on the sewer.
Mr. Chair. Earlier tonight when we cut citizens' participation short, we had Mrs. Winnadine here, and I was going to bring this up under any other town business, but you skipped it.
I think I explained it earlier.
Yes, I understand, but she has invitations to deliver to us, and I want to make sure that the board gets them before we close our meeting. So take one, pass it down, please. These are invitations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that concludes the one on project number 3, ladies and gentlemen. The other thing we have is CDM. So if you exit the building quiet so we can get on with the meeting. Hey, I gotta go again. Yeah, I'll be there. No. But you know why? I know, because what's going to happen, I'll be here.
No, my side is killing me. Like, I feel nauseous. That's how bad it hurts.
Hey, so what is this? The way you're giving these
Vegetables.
Is there a contribution to this?
Oh, I don't know if we... And see how the guy posts this?
I bet it is.
Oh, I don't know if
I know
it's
they
down
have.
there.
They're taking a break until they clear.
Not yet. I know we started late.
Winner. The meeting is still going on, please. If you exit the building. If you are done, will they exit the building, please? I have to call somebody to exit the building. Any conversation will be taken out in the hall. The meeting is still going on. We still have other business to attend to. Thank you. Okay, who wants the floor first? Mike, Guy, Michael, Michael.
Sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, members.
Sir. I did want to introduce Mr. Bob Catone, who is accompanying me tonight. Bob is a Senior Vice President with CDM. He is the Client Service Manager for the town of Wareham, has been working in town for about 20 years or so. Bob is the contracting officer for CDM for the town, so works sort of behind the scenes on all our projects. So we just wanted to revisit with the board the discussion that we had about a month or so ago regarding...
Wait up, hold on, yes.
It's okay, it is hard to...
This is going to be quick, right, Mark?
We got the deepest street.
That was done last week. Oh, man.
St. Patrick's Day. Free parking, you okay at free parking?
I did, that's been taken care of.
You didn't hold it up for me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, I'm sorry. So again, I just wanted to revisit and have a discussion on the status of the Contract 2 services contract for CDM, the General Construction Services contract. As we discussed, just as some background for members who may have not been familiar, the contractor had requested and the board granted an extension of contract time to finish Contract 2. The reasoning for that extension was the 3 pumping stations in Contract 2 that were relocated after the bids were received. By virtue of those stations moving, the schedule has extended approximately 5 months, or their proposed schedule approximately 5 months from what was originally budgeted for. So at this point, we are essentially beyond the limits of our contract. So we are working at risk without a contract at this point. The reason we're doing that is because the town of Wareham is a great client and has been for many years, and we want to make sure that this project gets completed as it's intended to. However, we are we can't continue to work without a contract, essentially. So just wanted, again, to open the discussion up, field any other questions you may have in terms of whether it's an amendment or a transfer that we talked about, in terms of extending the resident engineering contract for us to observe, document, and close out construction of contract 2.
Got any questions for the board? I guess Steve is first one up.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Mike, how much time do you need in an extension?
The extension that Gioso requested was for, it was just shy of 5 months. It was through the end of July. They have since, as of this week, requested another extension for another 30 days to the end of August to finish what needs to be done on the pumping stations. At this point, all the other work on the contracts is completed. All the pipe is in the ground. 3 of the pumping stations are in the ground. A 4th is being worked on as we speak. So what we had requested was a transfer or an amendment for $140,000 that would allow us to oversee that work. $140,000. Of that amount, approximately $90,000 is CDM costs, $50,000 are MBE, WBE costs that are required as part of the SRF program. We have resident inspectors who work for MBE firms assisting us in overseeing the construction. So that would take us through the end of August. Again, they just as of this week asked for an additional extension. We are not asking for additional funds for that additional extension. They have agreed to do some of the work in parallel so that it all gets done by the end of August. So as long as they uphold that schedule, we would be able to maintain our presence on site. Now,
through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Gifford, Mark, when you're done with Mr. Campino.
I'm sorry.
When do we put a period on this? When do we put a period on this? I mean, we're asking for another extension. When does this end? End of August? August 31st? Is it over? Or are you back for another extension? Not you personally, you know what I mean. Are we done on August 31st?
They're saying we're done in August.
I'm asking you.
That's the time they're asking for.
I'm sorry?
That's the time they're asking for. And there's Gioso's saying they will be done in August. Can I guarantee that? No.
What's your best guesstimate?
My best estimate is I believe they will be done. I believe they will be done, but I can't guarantee that.
You need to talk on the microphone for people at home. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
I have a question. Now, the extension that they have, in March, we gave them an extension. That expires when?
that goes through the end of July.
End of July. Now, you expecting them to come in for another extension?
As I indicated, we got a letter yesterday or Friday requesting that it gets extended till the end of August as opposed to the end of July.
Now, the figures you just gave us, 140, that was to take you up to the end of July.
That was to take us through completion of the project, because at the end of the project, there's closeout paperwork that needs to be done, both in terms of DEP SRF program and the ARAR, the stimulus program. So that work will be done during August while the contractor finishes the contract. So during August, it would be startup of the pumping stations and punch list items. At that same time, we'd be doing the closeout work associated with closing out the contract, record drawings that are required by DEP as well to document what was actually installed.
So this 140 is to clear up the rest of the contract, whether we end in July or September or November. There will be no more coming from CDM, unless, if they ask for any other extension, that they pay for any charges accrued by you. Unless you're going to say the 140 is going to cover us till the end of the project, no matter when.
Yeah, as I indicated, at this point, there isn't a lot of work left to do. So, as Mark indicated, by our best estimation and by what the contractor is telling us, they'll be done by August. If something out of the ordinary happens and they somehow get delayed, obviously I have no control over that. What we're saying is we think their estimation is appropriate, and we have with that transfer, would have the funds in order to complete the project and finish it.
And all change orders have been submitted and figured on up to the time extension?
To this point, there haven't been any change orders. I did want to talk about that. I have, this issue, this came up at the previous meeting. It was actually just another meeting yesterday to sit down with the contractor to work through the final costs on contract 2.
Okay, so the final costs haven't been done, but right now all we're doing is for your costs up until the end of the project. Is that what you're going for now?
That's correct. There is not a formal change order in front of you. There will be one, and we can talk about that. The price, the additional cost for moving the 3 pumping stations is on the order of $160,000 total between the 3. So 160. If I may.
What is that, 160?
I thought you said 140.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Didn't you say 140? Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? Is this the end of our contract with you? Once this sewer project is done, we're putting contract 3 off for now. Where are we in terms of our contract with you?
We're under contract, at least in theory, to finish overseeing contract 2. Obviously, if contract 3 does not go forward, which you voted tonight that it doesn't, then once contract 2 is finished, and then that's the end of our current contract for construction.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, through you, to Mr. Judici. So the 160 that's the total of having to make those changes, correct? The pumping station changes.
I'm sorry.
So my question is this: does these extensions, as Mr. Cruz I think was trying to determine, these extensions are going to be an additional cost or is this included in this that we're seeing?
The time extension that the contractor is asking for is just that, a time extension.
Just a time extension.
He needs more time under the contract to finish the scope of work that he's required to finish. The costs that you're looking at are the actual physical costs to do that extra work that he needs more time to do.
I understand. My other question is this, and Mr. Campina kind of alluded to it as well. No, don't hang on to that. And that's, we've already been, have we been into funds for contract 3? Any kind of funding for that? Did he say that we started to expend some monies from contract 3?
Well, certainly for contract 3, we designed and bid the project, so there were costs that were incurred in that process, not for construction, obviously.
So this project has only been tabled. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to change the scope of the project. I mean, currently it's simply been tabled. Am I correct with that motion? Okay, thank you.
Well,
So, to follow up on Mrs. Begley's question, are you saying that the total in new charges is 300 grand? Is that correct? You and I are on the same page.
That's correct. The total cost of moving the pumping stations is approximately $300,000. Yes.
And because you know, these pumping stations, as I recall, sorry?
They were physically moved, but it was changed 2 or 3 times. Sometimes they come in and not there, not there.
All right, I know them.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of 2 other pumping stations. I'm not thinking of these. Okay.
Yeah, just to...
I recall the others. It was $88,000. I remember that, but that's not the same. It's not the same ones. Okay.
These stations were moved by the board in response to requests from the property owners where the stations were intended to go originally.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Sarah?
No. Need a motion?
Thanks. Questions that you need from us? John? Are you happy with it? All in agreement? Yep. I agree with it. I'm saying I'm happy with it, but I agree with it. It never happened. So this, once we do these 2, that's it for the project.
Well, just for clarification, I just wanted to give you this summary sheet for information before you made any kind of a decision. This is not an official change order. Subsequent to this discussion, you will be seeing a formal change order for the construction costs, and that, at that time, would be an appropriate time. It will have a more detailed description of the changes and the reasons for the changes, but it would look, in terms of the total, very much like that. There may be 1 or 2 other smaller items that are not associated with moving the pumping stations that would be included in that change order. So that would be the time to act on that.
That's not before the board,
No.
I'm sorry, sir. The change order, again, I wanted to, you had asked that at the last meeting. I just wanted to give that to you so you had all the information in front of you in terms of the total cost. And if I could just say something, and people hear change orders, obviously, and they have an adverse reaction, as we all do. I just want to clarify that there are 2 types of change orders. There's one that is associated with unforeseen conditions that are associated with any underground construction project, or associated with an issue with the plans and specifications that weren't clear that resulted in a change order. The second kind of change order are what we call owner-requested change orders. And unfortunately, this, although the cost is higher than we all had anticipated or expected, is an owner-requested change order. At this point, as I mentioned, Contract 2 is essentially done. I did allude to a minute ago there might be a couple of items, and we're talking less than $10,000, that would be non-owner requested change orders on Contract 2. So for a $5.5 million contract to see essentially 0 change orders is pretty good. We feel very, very good about that, and you should as well. Similarly, Contract 1 was a $5 million project or so. We had 1 change order on that contract for $65,000. So that was just over 1% in change orders on Contract 1. So, you know, we feel very good about the plans and specs that we delivered for the town. A big part of that is the design. Another part of that is the services during construction, having someone out there to make sure that everything gets built in accordance with the plans and specs, and to catch issues before they become issues that involve costs. You know, just sort of coming full circle back into Contract 2, that's why it's critical for you to have someone out there watching this work as it goes on. We understand that that's $300,000 is not easy to accept for anybody, but it essentially is what it is. To protect the town, to protect yourselves, and to close out the project, you need someone out there watching it. And that's all. So at this point, we just need some direction whether you would want to see it in the form of an amendment to Contract 2, or whether it be a transfer from funds that were slated to cover construction costs, services during construction costs for Contract 3, which is what we had proposed. We'll proceed however you desire.
Fundamentally, we need an amendment. It's a decision as to where the money comes from, in terms of whether it's a transfer or if it's from some excess monies that are still on the $20 million bond issue.
Mr. Chair, if we've tabled Contract 3, can we expend any money from that? I would imagine this board just voted to table Contract 3. So are we voting tonight to just extend the contract? Sorry, that might be me. Are we voting tonight to just extend the contract to a certain date, or are we making a motion tonight to expend funds? I thought...
What we're requesting is a vote to cover our costs, to continue to be on site during Contract 2. Not the construction costs. As I indicated, that'll come to you in the form of a change order, the $160,000.
I understand.
As Bob indicated, where that money comes from is entirely, obviously, your decision. We're just looking to get that amendment in whatever form it may take.
Yes.
We would write an amendment and submit it to the board for your signature.
That's correct.
Mr. Chair, through you and Mike, you said that 140 is not only August 31st, but through completion. So if it's September 15th, this covers it.
If it's September 15th, it covers it. If it's December 15th, which by any stretch of the imagination I can't see happening, then...
Well, you're asking for the extension, so it needs to be clear. If you said through 140 through completion, and then we also set a date on it, so we need to make this in a motion. I need that motion to be clear. I'm not going to leave something.
We can extend it a second time, if you need more time. So if we extend it to September 15th, for example, and if we extend the contract to September 15th, for example, you would have an indication prior to September 15th if you needed more time. But September 15th would be a nice cushion, since you've said that it's likely they would be finished without unforeseen circumstances by August 31st. So do you need a vote to extend, a motion and a vote to extend the contract to September 15th?
Just in terms of procedurally, our contract doesn't really have a time associated with it. It's based on the budget.
But who needed the contract extension then?
The contractor, and that hasn't come to you formally for a vote yet.
Yeah, we
so
haven't got anything yet, so we'll have to wait on that.
So we will forward to you.
All we're doing right now is for your 140.
That's correct. You have already extended the contractor's contract through July 31st. He has subsequently asked for an extension of his contract, again, a no-cost time extension to August 31st. All we're looking for is approval to submit an amendment for $140,000 to take us through September 15th, the completion of the project.
To the end of the project, whether it's September, October. That's what I'm trying to get at. This is one
I know what you're doing.
We want the project.
I understand what you're
You picked a
doing.
bad night, Mr. Juice.
I'm sorry, it's very late.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, may I have a motion?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board authorize the extension of CDM's contract up to $140,000.
Motion made by Mike, second by Steve. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Unanimous, 500.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion
Second.
to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Aye,
Thank you.
twice.
Thanks.
Aye. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Have a nice holiday, everybody.
Thank you, CDM. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Matt.